Yeah, exactly.
We are ready to go.
Okay, fine. All right, terrific. I'm going to get started then. Let me start by welcoming everybody to this meeting of the Board of Governors of Pennsylvania's State System of Higher Education. For those in the public and the media watching via YouTube, you as well. So just a couple of little housekeeping things. Remember to please keep your lines on mute until you want to speak to help minimize background noise. And board members, as Randy said, there's a raise hand function that you can find if you click on the participants tab, which for me is at the bottom of my screen. So I assume it is for you as well. And Randy will keep track of that. In that way, we have about 56 people, I think, on this Zoom meeting. So that will sort of help us, keep some semblance of order. Okay, Sharissa, shall we start? Would you please do a roll call?
I sure can. Thank you. Representative Tim Briggs. Governor Audrey Bronson. Governor Nicole Dunlop.
Here.
Governor Alexander Feefo.
Present.
Governor Donald Hauser.
I'm here.
Senator Scott Martin.
I'm here.
Thank you. Vice Chair David Mazer.
Present.
Governor Mary Moskowitz.
Here.
Governor Thomas Muller.
Here.
Acting Secretary Noe Ortega.
Here.
Representative Brad Roy.
Here.
Representative Roy, thank you. Senator Judith Schwank.
Present.
Chair Shapiro, you are here. Vice Chair Sam Smith.
I'm here.
Thank you. Secretary Meg Sneed. Alternate designee Allison Jones. Governor Stephen Washington. Governor Neil Weaver.
Here.
Governor Janet Yeomans.
Here.
And Dr. Jamie Phillips.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum present.
Thank you very much, Sharissa. Appreciate that. And there might have been one or two people that didn't know, who might have been on mute and didn't have a chance to chime in with a roll call. So if that happens, you'll just keep us posted.
I will. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. Appreciate that. So I just want to start once again by thanking our remarkable faculty and staff and administrators for all of your efforts helping our students get through and even succeed during this semester amid the challenges of the pandemic. The board was fortunate to hear from the presidents about the challenges and how the challenges are being met, and absolutely to a person acknowledge that the heroic efforts taking place at each of our schools to make for better connection among students and between students and their campuses, with the faculty, to create as much community as is possible under the circumstances. It really is nothing less than heroic, and we thank you all so much. And we reach out to not only our faculty, staff, and administrators, but of course our students as well, to say, please hang in there. We know that you've come here to get a quality education and the start of a good life and educated as great citizens of this Commonwealth and the country. And we intend to keep on with that mission, no matter what it takes. And it's because we're all working together that we're able to achieve what we have been able to achieve. So I just felt it was important to add that as we start this yet again Zoom meeting of the Board of Governors. We really do have, I think, a pretty exciting meeting, a very robust agenda today and tomorrow. we're going to have the opportunity to discuss and advance some really important initiatives. Today, just to sort of set the stage, we will be discussing, giving you an update and what the latest is on system redesign and institutional integration efforts. And that, of course, is going to inform us and provide useful insights as this work continues on a timeline and within the parameters of Act 50, which was passed earlier a few months ago by our state legislature and signed by our governor. Tomorrow, we're going to hear the final recommendations from the commission that we established on faculty shared governance, a very important item to ensure that we have faculty voice at the system level and input on the matters that are coming before us with regard to system redesign and our other efforts. This has been something that I have long wanted to be putting into place. And, I think we're having some wonderful work by that commission. And I thank Hauser, who chaired that commission, from our board. We'll be hearing those recommendations. And we're also going to hear tomorrow, we're going to have a discussion with Dr. Denise Pearson, who is our chief and it's with regard to the work that she is doing in developing a strategy for advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion into everything we do here at the system. And we'll be discussing the establishment of a commission that I'm going to charge that will help guide the board's role in fostering diversion, equity, and inclusion at the system governance level, because we believe firmly that things are modeled by leadership, and it starts with us as a board of governors. And so this is an exciting time with this initiative also happening that ties directly into our ability to be successful with system redesign, because we can't achieve our mission to educate the citizens of the Commonwealth unless we keep in mind that that means we have to be on the lookout to be behaving in ways that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's only in that way that we can achieve system redesign. So this is all related. This is all part of a whole. So for some of us, including myself, it's hard to believe that the systems redesign efforts started back in 2017. That seems so long ago. But the entire time, our board has been dedicated to not only the mission and the vision that we had with regard to system redesign, which is around ensuring success for all of our students, leveraging the strengths and ensuring sustainability among our university, and infusing excellence in governance and transformational leadership as our pillars. And what we have said all along is that we're dedicated to following the data wherever the data lead, all in support of these three pillars. And I must say, translating thoughts at the executive leadership level, and we're fortunate to have a chancellor who not only understands that, but by his very nature lives and breathes data. That's what Dan is all about. And so we're very lucky to have him with us doing that. And today's conversations are an important step in our collaborative effort to determine what the future of our system should look like. A system in which we see expanded academic supports and opportunities for all students in all parts of the Commonwealth, with the system being the great facilitator for that. Transparency is a top priority. It goes along with following the data. If you're going to follow the data, you've got to be transparent about what the data are saying and how the data are guiding us. And we will be as we work through this process and as we engage with all of our stakeholders. Obviously, there's a wide range of concerns and opinions, and we need to hear it all, not just to say that we have been inclusive, but because that's the only way you get real input, is to hear what people who have other opinions have to say. So I just want to note, if you, anyone who wants to find out further information, some more detailed information, please be sure to take a look at our website, which has more details about this and more information that is directly related to the system redesign and institutional integrations that are on our agenda. So once again, it's critically important that we have all the facts as we start the next part of this journey, because now we sort of go from the conceptual to something more tangible. And so this is, you know, what I'm all about. We have to keep our eyes on the prize. We have to focus on the future, on what we want to see. We have to be willing to acknowledge culture and acknowledge history and acknowledge all that we have been, and also to say, how do we build on that for the future? Because it's the future we're talking about. So I think with that in mind, and always keeping that in mind, please, as we proceed with the rest of the meeting today and tomorrow, I'll have some more remarks to make. But I now want to see if there are any members of the general public who wish to speak. You should have dialed into the number provided that was provided in the sunshine notice. So let me now ask Randy to see if we have anyone on the line for public comment.
Sure, we have a couple of people on the line, so I will check in with them to see. We're first going to go, there's a caller from Providence, Rhode Island. We'll see if they have a desire to speak. Caller from Providence. Hold on one second. One second. 1 second, we're just gonna make sure the audio is connecting, so 1 second.
Hi, yes, my number's technically Providence, but I am in Pennsylvania. This is Tabitha Bernstein-Danis. I'm the chair of the Social Justice Committee for APSA, and the statement I'm reading today is a joint statement from the APSA Social Justice Committee, which encompasses social justice chairs from each of the PASHE institutions. For years, the PASHE system has been battling underfunding, decreasing enrollment, and now the upending of traditional instruction by the coronavirus. Amid all of these challenges, addressing systemic social injustices and inequities that have persisted for decades is daunting. While we acknowledge the challenging financial situation currently facing the PASHE system, we also realize this is in large part due to cuts to higher education that occurred under Governor Corbett and to this day have not been fully restored. Pennsylvania falls at a dismal 47th in the country in per capita funding for higher education. Pennsylvania undergraduate students face the second highest level of student debt in the country. It is clear that better state funding for higher education should be an urgent priority for PASHE. We, the APSA Social Justice Committee, come before the board today to ask how the Chancellor's redesigned plans aim to redress the systemic problem. This summer, a Spotlight PA article gave students a voice about the persistent racism they face across our university. When asked for comment, Chancellor Dan Greenstein stated, "We're creating an opportunity to accelerate the work, but we don't want to sell. This is the hardest thing we'll do, and the needles are always slow to move." We find this statement surprising. The redesign process, for instance, has been moving forward at a fast pace. Indeed, the Chancellor has insisted on its speed. How is it, then, that combating racism and inequity hasn't been given equal urgency? Why hasn't the redesign process accounted for and factored in the ways it either sustains, promotes, or redresses inequity. It's become increasingly clear, moreover, that the Chancellor has controlled many of the needles in the system. When it comes to questions of addressing racism and inequity, the Chancellor has not taken leadership on the issue. What work does he believe needs to be done? And has he spoken to the many on our campuses who have been doing this work for decades? What are the opportunities he's creating for our students who are Black and Indigenous people of color? We question why there is an urgency to collapse programs, raise student-faculty ratios, and cut adjuncts and support services at precisely the moment when our universities are continuing the ongoing work of becoming more inclusive. How does the redesign, in other words, materially increase opportunity for Black students and other students of color? We wonder, would the Chancellor send his children to a post-redesigned PASHE school? How does the redesign redress instead of exacerbate the inequities of our current system? Some of the few solutions offered, such as increased online programs, like those offered at Western Governors University, which the Chancellor has held up as a model, will not solve these problems. It will likely make them worse. Study after study shows that such programs, in fact, exacerbate inequities of race and class. Such programming often fails our most vulnerable students. We are encouraged by the hiring of Dr. Denise Pearson, the Vice Chancellor and Chief Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer at PASHE, and look forward to working with her. We would love to hear how the redesign will, in fact, increase opportunity for Black and Indigenous people of color and other students of color. We don't want slogans, we want data. The Chancellor needs to listen to students and invest in them. They have already proposed solutions. In a follow-up to that Spotlight PA article, students proposed the following: hire more faculty of color, including mental health counselors, for instance, and supporting anti-racism initiatives and institutes. All of these are expansions of services. They are not cuts. They require investments in faculty, not divestment of services. What we're asking for is leadership. Just this summer, the Chancellor wrote a long blog post about responsibility. We're waiting for him to take some of it. When tested with the pandemic, the Chancellor, who has promoted systemness in this redesign process, failed to facilitate it at a time when it was desperately needed. For example, in a situation that reminds us of the overt racism of the 1950s, Cheney University, the nation's oldest historically Black college and university, does not have a system of COVID testing on campus. They claim no cases, but are not testing. Even the federal government acknowledges the need for increased COVID testing resources at historically Black colleges and universities. It is a failure of leadership for the Chancellor to not acknowledge this need. Without access to this testing, this situation allows for a disproportionate danger that will impact the health of Black students and their families when they travel home for Thanksgiving. How is this equitable? Many of our universities have been left on their own to figure out how to navigate a historical pandemic. Is this systemness? A failure to put forth a policy that would have all PASHE schools on equal footing for testing that impacts our most vulnerable students disproportionately. It seems we are only a system in the Chancellor's eyes when the integration of services and the sharing of faculty are on the table. When he really needs to lead, he leaves each university on its own. How can one retain and recruit while at the same time retrenching faculty? How at this moment, amid a pandemic and an economic downturn, will retrenching faculty lead to a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive system? How will this create anything but harm to the universities and the communities they serve? Ultimately, we fear the needle of the redesign process will move faster than the needle of racial equality. We certainly don't want a redesigned system that maintains the status quo or worse, deepens the divides. We want results that work for our students, faculty, and staff. We want justice and equity and inclusion. If the redesign fails on these fronts, we hope the Chancellor will take responsibility for those failures. Thank you.
Thank you for
And
those
our-
comments. Randy, anybody else?
Our next caller is also from Lock Haven area. 570-660 is the phone number. Do you have a comment?
Yes. My name is Tiffany Haynes. I'm a staff member at Lock Haven University. I wrote a letter as well. I'll just read some points of it. I am a custodian, so I'm not very good with words, so here we go. In the summer of 2018, our Lock Haven University has a SIG conference center apart from the university. Our facilities department was requested to go out and help load sandbags, and the area was flooded. And so, our entire facilities department rushed to its aid, diligently, tirelessly preparing sandbags, tying and passing the 20-pound bags down the assembly line. We put ourselves at risk that day to save a building from costly damage that may have been unattainable in this time of financial distress. We exert and adhere to the integrity, sustainability, and vitality it takes to be a part of our facilities department. We are flexible in our skills. We have helped to save this university not only in a financial aspect, but also by maintaining the quality and appearance of buildings and their surrounding landscapes. We have been involved with numerous water damage tasks and other emergencies over the years that custodians and grounds crew members are relied on to complete. These departments recognize and avert disaster unattainable with an outsourced contract. Although we are not directly involved in the forefront of academic success, we are on the front lines fighting COVID-19 to ensure a safe return of the students, faculty, and staff, and the general public. We have adapted and continue to stay committed to this endeavor. We have worked in dedication to provide quality service to our students and reassure their families they are in a safe and disinfected environment. We did this pre-COVID and have remained resilient in this goal. We do more than keep campus beautiful and clean. We are often the people students see and approach. They may know us by name or face, and they know who we are to help them at any time. We direct them, suggest who to contact when they're in need, because many of us have been a part of the LHU family for 10, 15, or over 20 years and know our campus community very well. The students are comfortable with our department because we're a familiar face. We bring them extra comfort and safety in knowing why we're here, whether it be to clean, shovel snow, mow, help with disasters, or just to be a friendly neighbor and support them along their way. The students can be confident in approaching us because we have the necessary training for clearances to support our integrity. We are essential employees and have proven over the years that we are a reliable source that the entire campus utilizes for a variety of reasons beyond our daily job titles.
Press the star key twice.
Outsourcing this department is threatening because no one will submit work orders for building maintenance, move furniture, paint athletic fields, set up for social distance events, move bleachers, change light bulbs, check doors to make sure they operate correctly, notice trouble alarms, report abuse, or help a student in need. We are much more than grass cutters and cleaners. Surely, regrouping, restructuring, and learning. We're talking about what? Hello?
Okay, I apologize for the audio issue. Thank you very much for your comments. We appreciate it.
Hello, am I still on?
Well, unfortunately, we're having a lot of difficulty at this point, and you're going in and out, but I think we did understand the point that you're trying to make. We made it very much. Have to move on to the next speaker. Let me just remind you, have your remarks be about a couple of minutes to make sure we get. Randy, is there something we can do technologically eliminate static and see this?
Yeah, we think there's something going on with the external public line. Doesn't seem to be affecting the Zoom. It just seems to have gotten worse.
Well, do we have anybody else who wants to make public comment on that external line?
I have one more
Just hang
from,
on the line, I think they'll fix it.
yes, one more from Herndon, Virginia.
Okay, I apologize again about this terrible static. Yes, please go ahead with your remarks.
Hello?
Limit them. Randy, do we have called on our next comment? From Virginia, did you say? Virginia?
Yes.
Fine.
Is
Okay.
the caller from Virginia, do you have a comment? I don't hear anyone from Virginia. And then there was a caller from Tacoma, Washington.
Okay. Is the caller from Tacoma, Washington on and wanting to make limited remarks?
We would also invite the callers to send those remarks. I've muted the public line because that's clearly the problem.
Okay.
We'll invite the callers to send those public remarks, if you want, via email to board@pashi.edu, and we'll make sure that they are provided to the board and included in the minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. And once again, on behalf of all of us, I do apologize to those who are on the public external line for the technological difficulties encountered. But
Madam Chairwoman, Brad Roy here.
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to, just real quickly, I believe in the collective bargaining agreement, if a president approves replacing a faculty member, if there's a vacancy, the faculty from that department have to approve the new professor being hired before the president can actually make the offer final. That was in Article 11 of the union contract, appointment of faculty. So the faculty union already has the opportunity to make sure that there's a racially and gender diverse group of people being hired to be faculty members. It's actually in the collective bargaining agreement. So at any point, the faculty, they could basically decide from that department where the vacancy is, they could decide what gender or what race the new professor is going to be. That's my understanding of how that works.
All right, thank you very much, Representative Roy. Due to the fact that this is a public commentary time per our bylaws, we are not permitted to actually address or react to public comment. We'll take what you say under consideration. Thank you. I appreciate those remarks, but we're not going to keep that particular topic on the agenda at this time. We are still in the commentary phase, and I would like now to turn to our union leaders for any remarks they would like to make. Could we please hear first from Dr. Chad Brown on behalf of SCUPA?
Thank you, Chairperson Shapiro. It's my pleasure to speak today. So Chairperson Shapiro, governors, Chancellor Greenstein, university presidents, colleagues, and guests. I appreciate the privilege to be here today representing and reminding everyone the commitment the State College and University Professional Association, SCUPA, members have to serve, advocate, and support the students who attend our universities. Today, I would like to talk to you about student and professional success in our state system. Student success is at the cornerstone of all that we do and is not a one-stop shop on our campuses. The SCUPAs that work in student success assist students with time management, note-taking, reading, and test-taking strategies to help our students enhance their success inside and outside the classroom. The student success staff provide academic workshops and programs to promote academic success and connectedness amongst the peers, faculty, and staff. In addition to telling you some of the things we do, I decided I wanted to talk to you about someone who, against all odds, graduated from Kutztown University. In 2014, when Michael arrived in my office, he had a GPA below 2.0, a grudge on his shoulder, and is self-admitted he had no confidence in his own ability to do college-level work. What Michael did have was a goal. He wanted to earn his college degree to make something of himself. I listened attentively as Michael told me about his college struggles, including his academics and family environment. Over the next few years, I met with Michael to help him improve his time management, test-taking skills, academic confidence, and discussed his plans for the future. Like many college students, Michael was nervous to enter the proverbial real world, and through our discussions, was able to calm his feelings and self-doubt, which allowed him to obtain his first job. It was a proud day when I watched Michael walk across the stage to receive his diploma because I knew he had worked so hard to achieve his goal, and now he was ready to be successful in the real world. Ironically, due to Michael's success, his younger brother enrolled at KU, and Michael suggested that he connect with our Student Success Office. I know many SCUPAs across the state system have similar stories. However, I wanted to share this one as it illustrates that Student Success Offices are not one-stop shop. They are places for students to talk, develop, and grow. Since March 2020, my student success colleagues and I at all universities have transitioned traditionally in-person services to online while providing personalized support that positively contributes to our state system's retention rates. I want to publicly thank all the SCUPAs for all their hard work which they have done and continue to do during this pandemic to help our students and state system be a success. Professional success is also a concept ingrained in SCUPA employees across our state system. In the past year, we have had many SCUPAs earn their first or second master's degrees, and a number of SCUPAs have earned their doctoral degrees in educational psychology, leadership, and higher education administration. I mention these accomplishments to demonstrate that we are committed to our students and our own personal and professional success. The SCUPA staff are dedicated to our students and universities. So as we continue to grow and offer new programs and provide services in ways we've never done before, I'm asking the Board of Governors, Chancellors, state system leaders, and university presidents to include SCUPA members as part of those conversations, because much of what we do is imperative to all of our students' success. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate those remarks. Now, let me call on Dr. Jamie Martin to offer remarks on behalf of APSCUF.
Thank you, Chairwoman Shapiro. 1 second, I'm having a bit of technical difficulty.
You wouldn't be the only one on this call.
You're in good company, Jamie.
Chairman Shapiro, Chancellor Greenstein, governors, university presidents, and guests. Good afternoon. As you know, I'm Jamie Martin, and I'm the president of APSCUF, and we represent the faculty and coaches at our 14 wonderful state-owned universities. I'm speaking here today with a very heavy heart as we continue to hear of the plans to fire over 300 of my colleagues at 7 of our universities. I want to address the narrative that we've been hearing as it relates to the need for these universities to retrench. One thing that is an important part of the narrative is the decline in student enrollment at our universities since 2010-11. And this is a true statement. Another piece of the narrative points to the increase in cost to attend our universities. This also is true. A final element is the need to return to a time when we were most efficient And translated, that means returning to the student-faculty ratio of 2010-11. I want to offer a slightly different version of the narrative as it relates to enrollments, to cost, and to student-faculty ratios. When looking at trends, it's critical to examine a time frame that allows for an accurate picture of what has occurred over time. When looking at enrollments and discussing a trend, it is not statistically sound to use a starting point as the high water mark when the enrollments at our universities reach their peak. That is deceptive. If you look at a 20-year trend rather than a 10-year trend from 1999 to 2019, a very different picture emerges. Between 2000 and 2010, student enrollment increased by 24% from 95,000 students to about 119,000. Between 2010 and 2019, enrollments decreased by 19%. Thus, the trend actually looks like a normal curve and one that was predicted by demographers. Something else has also followed a similar trend line, and that is the number of faculty at our universities. Between 2000 and 2010, the number of faculty rose by 7.4%. From 2010 to 19, the number of faculty decreased by 7.4%. We have not yet received information on the number of faculty at our universities this fall, but we do know that 258 of our members retired since the start of fall 2019. And while we have asked for the cost savings of that number of retirements, we have not yet received it. However, our researcher estimates it will translate into tens of millions of dollars in savings for the state system. There is one area where we've not seen a similar trend, and that is among the management ranks at our universities, as their numbers have increased by 5% since 2010. With regard to the cost of attending one of our universities, we all realize that tuition has increased over the last 10 years, and probably even beyond that, but the reasons that it has are important to examine. When I attended IUP as an undergraduate student, the state appropriations covered approximately 75% of the cost of attendance, and I, with the help of my parents, paid the remaining costs. Our current students face a different reality. They now have the burden of paying approximately 75% of the cost of attendance. While my members are appreciative of the support of the legislature and of the governor for increasing appropriations over the past few years, we all have heard where Pennsylvania ranks in funding for public. Tuition, however, is not the only cost driver. At around the same point in time that PASHE endured a 19% cut in appropriations, which is also around the same time of our peak enrollments, decisions were made to undertake a building frenzy at many of our universities. New residence halls were built, new recreation centers, new convention centers, climbing walls, and on and on. The individuals who were most vocal about how problematic and financially unwise this was were the faculty, and I was one of them at IUP. Our voices were ignored and dismissed. The result is that debt service, the amount of money needed to make principal and interest payments, has increased 43% since 2010 at 10 of our universities. At California, at Edinburgh, at Mansfield, Lock Haven, and at Shippensburg, there we saw purchasing of their student housing and their debt service all doubled. For comparison purposes, only Cheney had a deficit in 2010-11. The predictable result is that housing costs have skyrocketed and have other types of fees. At most of our universities, housing costs and fees far outpace tuition costs. This is also an important part of the narrative. The student-faculty ratio is something we've been hearing a lot about, and particularly honing in on the ratio that existed in 2010-11. And now we're comparing that to what exists today. As I just stated, this is problematic and deceptive. I looked at a 20-year trend in student-faculty ratios. In 2000, the ratio was 18.72, and in 2019, the ratio is 18.62. That ratio is currently higher than students at Penn State, Pitt, Temple, Lincoln, and the SUNY system experience. Those students are afforded the opportunity to enjoy smaller classes on average, and I don't understand why our students, many of whom come from working and middle-class families, are less deserving of that same opportunity. All of you are aware that APSCUF and PASHE negotiated a collective bargaining agreement that's in effect from 2019 to 2023. We signed that contract on December 11th of 2019. During the negotiations process, Chancellor Greenstein and Chairman Shapira attended nearly every single meeting that we had, along with the rest of their team. We sat for hours in the same room for many days and months discussing a wide array of topics, some of them very difficult, many of them very challenging, and we worked through them all. I know that the Chancellor had regular meetings with my predecessor, Dr. Ken Mash, where they engaged in discussions about difficult and challenging issues. At no point during the negotiations did the issue of the dire financial situation that would lead to the need to retrench 300 faculty members ever come up. I don't think there could be anybody here in attendance today that would believe that we would not have been interested in developing alternatives to that during our negotiations. We acknowledge that COVID-19 has had an impact on the finances of our state system universities, but I want to be clear in pointing out that the decision to accelerate the financial sustainability process from a 5-year timeline to a 3-year timeline came in April, before we knew much at all about COVID. The cavalier manner in which right sizing is discussed, making it sound innocuous, is distressing. It is not innocuous. I had a student ask me, what does retrenchment even mean? And I explained it means a person is being fired through no fault of their own. It's not because they're not performing their job. It is not because of a disciplinary issue. It is because a decision was made to reduce the workforce. It's imperative that everyone is aware of what we're talking about. 300 or more faculty members losing their careers and their healthcare in the middle of a global pandemic. I have concerns that the right sizing is going to disproportionately impact my colleagues who are women and who are minority. And all of this is occurring because of the directive to reach an arbitrary student faculty ratio of 2010 and 11, and that was an anomaly. Even more distressing to me is that our students are left out of the narrative. The impact of retrenchment on them has not been a topic of discussion. I am truly worried about them. They, like us all, are trying to survive a pandemic, but they're being kept in the dark about what is happening on 7 of our campuses. What's going to happen to them when they are able to return to campus and discover that the major they chose no longer exists and that they must either transfer or choose another major? What happens when they discover that their faculty advisor is gone? What will happen when the classes that they need to take to progress are not available and that the size of their classes have increased? They deserve to be told what is happening and how it will affect them, and they deserve to at least be included in the narrative. Thank you, and I hope that all of you continue to be well.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. We appreciate those remarks. Next, we will hear from Melissa Bauer, Vice President of PACT, who is here to offer remarks on behalf of PACT President Jack Wabi. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you, Cindy. Board of Governors, Chair, Chancellor, presidents of our universities, faculty, union representatives, and staff. Thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on the PA Council of Trustees. During these dynamic times, engagement of all stakeholders and transparency is critical. We thank you for your leadership and commitment to the strength of each university and the system. Trustees are dedicated to the purpose, as stated in Act 188, to provide a high-quality education at the lowest possible cost to our students. Our powers and duties are defined in Act 188, with one stating we are to assist our presidents in developing proper relations and understanding between the institutions and its programs and the public in order to serve the interest and needs of both. We want you to know we are aware that the role of trustees has shifted and has been elevated during these challenging times. We are here to assist. Trustees are not just stakeholders, we are shareholders. We are bringing solution-oriented thinking to the table, and we are committed to building relationships. Our upcoming PAC meetings next week focuses on these challenging times. They too will be completed via Zoom. We have a video with the Board of Governors Chair and the Chancellor. We also have broken our universities into 2 groups, the non-integrated and the integrated universities, to facilitate the most productive meetings. The dates are the afternoon of October 20th and the 22nd, respectively, for each group. As part of those meetings, we will have a Q&A with the Chancellor and a student trustee panel. The purpose of the student trustee panel is to hear the voices of all the student trustees during these uncharted times. We will finish with an overview of the student trustee appointment process and the president evaluation process. At this time, that completes my report. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Melissa. We very much appreciate those remarks. I believe that we need to go back to public comment before we get to our action items on the agenda. Randy, we have a caller who is prepared.
Yes, we were able to reach out to the two who were not able to either finish or make their call. And right now we have Andrea. So let me give Andrea a moment to unmute herself. Andrea, you'll want to hit *6 to unmute yourself so you can finish your comment.
Yes, am I on?
Loud
Yes.
and clear.
Thank you so much for calling me back. I really appreciate it. You know, I thought that getting kicked off the call was endemic of what we're seeing with some of these students doing remote learning. I can tell you that I'm a parent. I don't have any prepared remarks. I can only tell you what I see, what I feel, and the status of I think, our concerns going forward. I very much appreciate the first woman who called and talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Couldn't be more on board with that. Yet what I find that what the board and all you folks with due respect is lacking is that we're not seeing any focus on special education. Special education students are a real part of the population. They should be included in the inclusivity. Whether you're aware or not, I understand from the CDC, over 9% of the students have some sort of ADHD or other learning issue. If even half of those students are in the colleges, if you decide you're going to increase class size, reduce learning in class, reduce the traditional methods, reduce residential learning, you've just further reduced your enrollment because they cannot keep up with direct or remote. It doesn't work. And I had a huge amount of appreciation for your callers. Chad Brown, who talked about student success. The story was heartwarming. We need more reaching out. We need more caring. And we need more of an indication as to which way you're going so the parents can make a decision for the spring. Are you going mostly remote? Are you going mostly direct? If so, it does not work for a very big, I would say, almost perhaps a majority of your population, but certainly a majority of the students with disabilities. I'd like you to really consider this as you plan and would like to know in advance, possibly by mid-November, what the universities are going to do with respect to the spring. We have deadlines for enrollment. We have deadlines for choosing classes. Yet what we don't have is any information on how the education is going to be delivered, and quite honestly, question whether or not students are being put first. Is education put first? Those are my comments. Very passionate about education, and I thank all of you for your time.
Thank you, Andrea. We would like to get your last name for the record, so your remarks can be included in acknowledgement in the minutes.
W-A-R-D.
Thank you very much, and apologize for the technological snafus earlier. Randy, is there anybody else at this point?
We had one more caller named Tiffany, but she has not called back in, so I will let you know if she does.
Okay, and then I can proceed with the agenda.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Much again. Okay, thank you. And you know, the only I just want to make one comment about this. I very much appreciate this public commentary. There are too many board meetings where we don't get the public commenting, and you know, we're owned by all of you. We are owned by this Commonwealth. You are the ones that make it possible for us to have this privilege of providing education. I just very much appreciate that people care enough and are taking the time to call in and to, you know, sort of raise our consciousness about all of these issues. some of which I think we're actually going to be addressing, but we're never doing enough, and we need to know what you think. So once again, Andrea, Tiffany, I'm sorry to be using your first names, but that's sort of what I'm remembering in my mind. I don't mean any disrespect, but we very much appreciate your taking the time and making the effort to make public commentary, and we encourage it. So we're going to move forward. We'll take the consent agenda first. These items are administrative in nature, as we know, and we will see if we can pass them in one motion unless there is a member who wishes to pull out any particular item. So, and that's all in your board packet, by the way. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved. Sam Smith.
Thank you, Sam. A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Let me now move on to more of the substance of our agenda, which will be to turn it over to Chancellor Dan for his remarks as he leads us into the system redesign discussion regarding institutional integrations. You're on mute, Dan.
I am. You'd think after all this time. Oh my goodness. Thank you very much, Chairwoman Shapira. And you know, I was thinking about this board meeting. This board meeting begins my third year as Chancellor of the system, and I guess I want folks to know I'm more inspired today than I was even 2 years ago by the power and promise of Pennsylvania's public higher education, by our students, our employees, our supporters, and our mission. And also after 2 years, I'm also wondering what I can say to the board in my remarks that I haven't already said or that you haven't already heard from me. You know, you have heard me speak at length about why we must transform our system, reflecting your views, why we must redesign. So reviewing briefly, 2 reasons. The first has to do with our financial challenges. They've come up already quite a lot today. They're real and they've existed for years. They have grown in criticality to the point where it is simply no longer possible to avoid addressing them head on. The can has been kicked down the road for years. The road ended. It ended before the pandemic. Financial stabilization is hard work. It forces painful trade-offs, but it's also a short-term thing. Austerity is not a strategy for securing the future of public higher education in this state or in any other, or for the future of our students. It is a necessary precondition for building that future. And it is a necessary condition of our preserving, frankly, strengthening the public trust in us as stewards of the hard-earned student and taxpayer dollars that together pay our bills. The second goal of our redesign is more fundamental and more long-lasting. It has to do with the changing needs of the state, our students, their prospective employers, and our communities. Today, right now, Pennsylvania economy needs at least 60% of our adults to have some form of post-secondary education. We're at about 47%. And if we wanted to close that difference, let's say if we wanted to close it by 2025, every single university and college in this state would need to increase its credentialing productivity year on year by about 8% a year. And what's happening? Instead, we're lucky if our credentialing productivity is level pegging. I'm guessing we're losing ground, not gaining it. And what's more, we can't make up the difference unless we find a way to engage people who we have not fully served: low-income students, students of color, students from rural communities, adults looking to reskill or upskill so they can continue productively to engage in a rapidly changing 21st century economy. The traditional residential comprehensive education that we offer is profoundly important, and long may it continue. But the number of people pursuing that kind of education is shrinking. This is not news. It has been shrinking for over a decade, and it will continue to shrink, dramatically so after 2025. And at the same time, there are many other people out there who need our help and who we must, as a public institution, think about serving. And that is where our transformation comes in, learning how best to serve whole new student groups who need our help and those students who are in our midst, but who need more support so they can succeed better. You have heard me speak about the shape of our system redesign, the progress we're making with it. We track our progress using dashboard measures against carefully designed work streams, all of which contribute to the broader redesign. And you have heard me express my irrepressible optimism that we have the creativity, talent, grit, and determination to accomplish our two key objectives: financial stabilization and our longer-term transformation, both of which are required for us to remain relevant in service to this Commonwealth. One thing you haven't heard from me is that after 2 years, my optimism is now being fueled not just by hope and aspirations and by my own personal commitment and the commitment of all who lead and serve with me. And all of us are leaders now, no matter where we sit within our organizations, the times require that of us. My optimism is fueled now with data, preliminary data, but nonetheless data which demonstrate that our hard work is paying off. Data that show that together, we've got this. We can deliver on our goals. We can land this plane. Data that show that with all of our challenges, this is the greatest time in our history to work, study, research, learn, and engage with anyone and every one of our state systems universities. And while I'm feeling humble and I don't want to get out over my skis and recognize that trends aren't made from only a few data points, I do want a quick review of the ones at least that I'm looking at. For 2 years in a row, the net average price a student pays to attend a university is little changed, thanks to the discipline that we have exercised with student tuition and fees and the growth in available institutional aid. For the first time in a decade, we have hit our enrollment targets and we have beat the national averages for our sector, and nearly half of our universities have seen enrollment gains. And fall 2020 student retention rates improved at most universities, representing multi-year growth at many of them. We haven't recovered the high watermarks from a decade ago, but we're on our way. So why is this happening? Perhaps there were pandemic or demographic effects, maybe. My bet, though, is that over the past few years, our universities have dug in and they have doubled down and they have refocused themselves on our students and their success, and their work in new student enrollment and enrolled student support is paying off. We're making progress with financial stabilization. This year alone, I think we managed $50 million in savings through shared services, debt refinancing, and a handful of other means. And we are seeing progress as well as universities adjust expenditure to reflect their new enrollment realities. And in case you hadn't noticed, the nation's oldest HBCU is no longer under imminent threat of losing its accreditation. Instead, it's pushing ahead with innovative partnerships with state system universities, with other regional universities, with other HBCUs, with commercial and nonprofit organizations, focusing its academic programming, enriching the experience it's providing its students, in growing enrollments, improving retention, improving graduation rates, and operating with a balanced budget. And there's more. We've strengthened our partnership with the General Assembly, as evident in the support for the bill that became Act 50 and gave the board the authorities it needs to continue in pursuit of our transformation, our systems redesign. That vote was 247 for and only 3 opposed. And that support is evident as well in the level funding the General Assembly provided for the system for this financial year, despite the gravity of the state's fiscal situation. And finally, despite horrific conditions resulting from this pandemic, each one of our universities is enabling its students to continue progress towards their degrees. Each one so far has designed, implemented, and executed against plans that are best suited to their local circumstances and needs, and above all, to their students. Is our students' experience optimal? Hardly. And I am as concerned as a chancellor as I am as a parent of a college sophomore about the health and well-being of our student in these times as they deal with additional anxieties resulting from the situations that we all find ourselves in. But I am also in awe of their resilience, as I am of the staff and faculty who have worked tirelessly to make this the best possible experience under the circumstances. That's a lot. And none of this was easy. And all of it required our working together with focus, dedication, and resolve. And together it is attracting the attention that, quite frankly, the system and our universities deserve from national philanthropies, higher education associations, individual system and university leaders, and faculty groups as one of the most interesting and frankly most promising efforts in this country that is seeking to grapple head on with the many challenges that are faced across this industry, and by doing so, reshaping public higher education for the 21st century. Today's board agenda includes more in the way of lofty promises and ambitions for our future, but I introduce it with renewed confidence that I have, that you should have, that we can turn promises into outcomes. That is who we are. That is what we do. That is what we are made of. And that is what we owe the people of this Commonwealth. When the Commission on System Level Faculty Shared Governance recommends during this board meeting an approach, don't let the detail about organizational structures, roles, and responsibilities bury the lead, which is this: we are committed to working together to build our future. When we outline the emerging agenda for the work that attacks nagging and persistent issues that exist across our system, they exist across our nation, issues that perpetuate injustice and inequity and exclusion, don't let the detail bury the lead, which is powerful and should fill all of us with tremendous pride. And the lead is this: we are seizing an opportunity to rise up together with collective resolve and to amplify and extend the hard work that has been done for years now at our universities, channeling it, focusing it so that it is more impactful. More impactful, eliminating opportunity gaps that show Black and brown students graduating at 10 to 15% lower rates than white students. More impactful, ensuring that every member of our community, irrespective of their role, their race, their creed, their gender orientation, feels included, safe, supported, welcomed, and honored as part of the community. More impactful, ensuring our employees at all levels reflect the composition of our students and the Commonwealth that we serve. And when we introduce projections that we have developed for 2 groups of 3 universities where we're considering integration, let's not let the technocratic and largely analytical work bury the lead, which is this: integration is not about cost cutting and efficiency and financial viability. It is about our students. It is about growth. It is about opportunity. It is about a once in a lifetime opportunity to design and then implement the public university as it ought to be in this 21st century, putting our students and their communities first. And it is to that financial review that we turn. As we do so, I want to acknowledge the work of a whole bunch of people who have been involved on this journey. In particular, I want to acknowledge the tremendous effort and the leadership of presidents at 6 universities that we'll be speaking about and with today, their leadership teams, their councils of trustees. I want to acknowledge Shelley Nickel, who has joined and is on this call, who has joined our leadership team as a strategic advisor to the integration process. Shelley has gone through this experience at the University System of Georgia, initially as a vice president for system, vice president, vice chancellor for strategy and finance, and then laterally as a president of a newly integrated university. She's a tremendous support for all of us in this work. And I want to thank her, as well as all of those of you who have been so instrumental in pushing this ball forward. So thank you, Chair. I think I'll turn back to you unless you're going to turn it immediately back to me. And Cindy, you're on mute.
Well, Dan, I learned it from you. Yeah, I think I probably am. We now want to get into the system redesign discussion. So do you want to get that kicked off?
Yeah. So, Randy, thanks. So inevitably, there's a deck. Randy's going to load, I think.
And you should see it now, yes?
I do not. me to try mine?
The rest of us do, just as an FYI.
Now the screen is no longer being shared, however, Randy. Oh, there you go.
There you
Okay.
go.
All right.
So everybody sees it but me. All right, I see it now. Yay! Oh God, that was horrific for a moment. All right, so this is going to be a joint effort. There'll be a number of us coming in and out of this deck. I hope we do it in an orderly fashion, so bear with us. We're going to talk about where we are in the process, remind ourselves what the process integration entails as defined in Act 50. Look at the analysis of this first very early stage of the process, which is the financial review, and also talk about next steps, also defined in Act 50. So Randy, if you go to the next slide. And anyone, board members, please jump in at any time with questions.
We always do.
Yeah, I'm not worried. Okay, so the process defined in Act 50 really begins with a financial review. This is what we're concluding now. And it really sets out to ask the question, integration is going to be hard. Thinking about what integrations would look like and how to implement them is going to be really hard. So before we actually go there, it was an opportunity to provide us with at least some preliminary early stage, not intentionally, this is not intended to be perfect data, but to give us some early evidence about whether what we're contemplating has potentially financial viability. And so that's where we are now. That's what we have done. It's really, is the juice worth the squeeze? The next stage of the process is then to address all of the questions that people immediately want answered, me too. It's the process that runs from October and we think to April, is to develop implementation plans. Okay. That's where we ask, what is an integrated university look like? How does it work? Where are things taught, to whom and how? And what does leadership and governance look like? All of the questions that immediately jump to the front of our mind. That is the time from October to April to address those questions. We hope to be able to submit plans to the board for consideration in April. And when we do that, that would kick off a 60-day public comment period as defined in Act 50. So the earliest that a board could approve an implementation going forward would be at the July 2021 meeting. And then we estimate again at this early stage that the soonest an integrated entity could receive its first cohort of students would not be until August 2022. The reason to go through that is to do two things. One of them is to manage our expectations. This financial review is largely a technocratic exercise. It lines up financial projections that we have for each of our universities, puts them into an analytical model, and just asks the questions, what would happen if? And then the second point I wanted to make is this is a very long process. It is a journey. It is a 2-year journey, at least a 2-year journey. Okay, so that's the process we're following. Randy, you want to move to the next slide unless there are questions? Okay, let me remind us where we began in July 22. This is what we recommended to the board, that our integration these are our goals, 6 goals that we outlined in the recommendations that the board affirmed, that integration was about maintaining or expanding high quality educational opportunities for students across all of Pennsylvania. Second one's super important, honor and engage local identity. Local identity is critically important in our universities. They've been around for a long time. They have deep roots into their communities, and preserving that, maintaining that, honoring that is critical to our work. Obviously, we should continue to meet regional economic and workforce needs, position ourselves for growth, realize cost savings, and leverage talented faculty and staff. We did have criteria. Why did we choose the universities that we started looking at? Because we saw in them potential to serve more students. We saw in them strong proximity to one another seems to be important, and obviously opportunities for not just cost savings, but more importantly, program alignment. And we made a number of assumptions about what an integrated entity would look like, because in order to do a financial plan, you have to, okay, what are you kind of shooting at? And so there are the assumptions that we started with: a single leadership team, a single faculty and staff, program array, unified enrollment management strategy, single budget, etc. So next slide. What we learned during the financial review, we come back and sort of amend the goals. So a little bit. With the integration goals, what we did here and what we learned, and during the financial review, again, I said a lot of the work was technocratic, lining up budget numbers. We did also host leadership teams from each of the universities to help us imagine, and from their perspective, what opportunities they saw through integration. And this is where they landed, and it really blows out that initial goal, which has to do with maintaining and expanding student opportunity. There was a lot of enthusiasm for, imagine what we could do if we could rethink the kinds of supports that we provide to our students. Imagine what we could do if we could actually recapture the advantage we used to have as being not just the most affordable post-secondary option in the state of Pennsylvania, but by the most affordable by thousands of dollars per year. Imagine if we could not just maintain student tuition and fees, net average price, but what if we could reduce it? We thought about the potential for growing into new pathways for students to follow, not just between our universities, but between our universities, schools, and community colleges. And we thought about new ways to strengthen the workforce. So the real orientation around student affordability, student success, serving students that we don't currently serve, serving better the students that we do serve today, really grew out of the work. And then the other thing I wanted to point out in this time slide with respect to integration assumptions, and this resulted from good conversations, initial conversations with creditors. Obviously what we're looking at is not just single leadership, single budget, single faculty, et cetera, but also the development of a single accredited entity. So the combination of where we started in July, amended, really elaborated through the work that we've done, frames our thinking, our goals, our criteria, and our assumptions going forward. Okay, next slide. Really just to emphasize the point that we reinforced in the conversations that we were able to have with our universities, with our council of trustees, with other groups that we met with, people constantly coming back to the importance of identity and the opportunity that we actually see in trying to understand better in this next phase. Well, what does identity actually mean? What are the attributes that give a university identity so we know what to maintain? So that's that slide. And then Randy, if you want to. So not all of you will be as familiar as we are with the 6 universities that we're speaking about. We are talking about looking at integrating Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, and Mansfield in the northeast, and California, Clarion, and Edinburgh in the west. And so that's just a quick overview of size, key student success measures, credit completion ratio, second year persistent, actually all of these having improved over the past couple of years. Again, not quite back to where they were 10 years ago, but getting there. 6-year graduation rates, average net price and unmet need, percent Pell eligible. Key indicators just give a flavor of the institutions that we're looking at. And these are the challenges, I think, that we uncovered in this work that we're going to have to address ourselves to very specifically, very deliberately in the next phase. Again, what we've done here, and I'm going to turn to Sharon in a moment, is to line up projections of where universities would be if integrated as is. But I think we recognize this is not a matter of A plus B plus C is A and B and C. It's not just a matter of managing 3 universities as is continuously, but creating something new that enables us to serve more students that we don't currently serve, expand into new markets, that take advantage of our financial realities, that take advantage of demographic trends, that recognize that in this state, supply in post-secondary education has outpaced demand. So the hard work, the work we have done is simply line up budget forecast data for universities as is. What's not included here is the forecasting that would result from universities as we imagine they will become. And that would be part of the next phase. So I think at this stage, if you go to the next slide, Randy, and I may have, at this juncture, and I should have done this at the last slide. I'm going to turn the presentation over to President Pearson from Clarion and to President Hanna at Bloomsburg. I have invited those presidents to lead the integration planning work going forward in the West and the East, respectively. And so I'm going to ask them to speak about the kind of thinking, the kind of preliminary directions that is emerging in the groups that they've been convening with over the last several weeks. And Dale and Bashar, if I was supposed to do that on the last slide, and there are other points you need to make on the last slide that I did not, please feel free to do that.
Glad to do that. Absolutely. Bashar, do you want to start, or would you like me to just rock and roll?
Go ahead, Dale. Rock and roll.
Okay, so we in the CCE integration team work in the Western region, we've been looking at identity, and we've been looking at the things we have in common. We are pretty excited about the work we do as access universities and the work that we do with rich campus robust experiences, each having its own flavor, its own culture, its own traditions, but also the fact that we are a proud access, we have proud access programs and high retention. So the students who come here to our 3 universities graduate in very high rates compared to the national populations that are accessed as well. We're strong teaching institutions. We have strong on the ground field work, internship experiences, all of that, which really gives our students a leg up in terms of entering into careers and being workforce ready. We have at our institutions in the West some associate degrees, which are ladders to very often to baccalaureate degrees, but at the core, we have a very strong liberal studies underpinning, but with real work experience as they move towards graduation or to graduate school. We are really excited about that. The other thing that makes us a little different from our colleagues in the Northeast is that what we've got in the West is strong online. We've been doing online for many, many years at Edinburgh, Clarion, and Cal. And the work that we've done has basically been under-resourced, and we've done it extremely well by the talent of our staff and our faculty leaders who've done this out of regional need based on what our students need. Many of them are rural, they're land bound, they're place bound, they're work bound. They can't necessarily come to a campus, and we have provided them a great educational experience using lots of creative ways to do that. So the technological pieces that we have, we can leverage those. We do know coming out of COVID, we have been working remotely for 7 months in all different ramifications of low density, high tech work. And because of that, we've gotten even more creative. So our initial conversations have been very strong, very collaborative, and we're really excited to see what we can do going forward. The 2 or 3 primary things that we're looking at is a very strong academic array, knowing that we've been doing recession management for quite a few years since the first recession in 2008 and 7, and cutting. And we, as comprehensive regionals, we want to make sure that the students get the best quality. They don't have to go to a private school to get the kind of experience that they should get going to a state school, and that they can do it in a way that's cost effective. So we're looking at, in the future, within a couple of years, we can drop the cost down to our students, whether they're on campus or they're on the ground, or whether they're online students. So we think we can really become very competitive, pull the resources that can be pulled together and reinvest in those things on the ground that we want to ramp up and beef up. And so that's what we're looking at in the Western region, and we're darn excited about it.
Thank you, Dale. I think in the Northeast, everything Dale described, with maybe the exception of the robust online program, fits right into our narrative. I think everything we do has a common underpinning, which is student success, student access, affordability, and ultimately either career preparation or graduate school admission. I think one of the really exciting things about any collaboration is recognizing sometimes growth comes from within, not just from the outside. On average, our system loses 1 student out of every 4. in the first year of enrollment, and then we lose potentially almost another student between years 2 and graduation. Back to what President Pearson said, I think we have to look at what are the services that our students need today, what are the mentoring, advising, out of classroom services that they need in order to stay at the university. Affordability is a big part of that. We hear from students the difficulty that they have in affording even our state system tuition. So I think a lot of what we're talking about here speaks to student success, not being everything to everyone, and also ultimately creating an affordable, high impact programs across the entire Commonwealth so that we enroll, maintain, retain, persist, and graduate students so they don't leave us with debt and no degree to show for. That's really one of the major underpinnings for a lot of the collaborative conversations we're having right now.
That's great. And if you want to move to the next slide, I think, Randy.
Go ahead, Dale.
Yeah, I think that on this particular slide, we're looking at what I mentioned earlier: our career ready, our internship experiences. One thing that I think a lot of individuals don't realize about what we have in the Western region is we have a lot of niche and specialty accreditations, which means we stack up internationally and nationally with the best. And this is something that it's unfortunately one of the best kept secrets. And we need to really rock this out and let people know that this is something, our standards are bar none ranked with national. We have many different niche accreditations, many different niche awards that we win. Our faculty have been putting this forth for many, many years. And so I think that's something that we really are looking at leveraging. We've also been, as part of the Apache redesign, we've been looking at sharing, regional sharing anyway. And so this is like regionalization on steroids. So we're really looking at what we can do to put the money back in the students' pockets and save costs. There'll be administrative cuts. We've already looked at, even though some individuals might be thinking that administration and management haven't been taking as many trims, this is one of the main focuses. We're looking at sharing management across systems so that the students themselves can get the quality of the advising that they need, the teaching that they need, and the success coaches that they need. So these are things that we think right now are going well in our direction. So that's been we've already been capturing some different savings and opportunities as we go forward. So the good news about the conversations was that it's already started. We're making things happen. We're thinking as a region, what's in the best interest of our students.
Thank you, Dale. I think, again, same thing applies to the Northeast. I think there are a couple of areas of emphasis I'd like to bring forth. One, I think we can also look at growing our graduate programs judiciously. I think we recently conducted a survey of our own undergraduates at Bloomsburg and recent grads, and there seems to be robust evidence that they're interested in pursuing graduate work within the state system. More specifically, it was specific to Bloomsburg. So I think there are opportunities to collaborate across campuses and really create niche graduate programs that serve the region or the entire Commonwealth without cannibalizing or competing with one another. I think another area where both the Chancellor and Dr. Pearson mentioned earlier is that making some sort of post-secondary training available for the citizens of the Commonwealth that don't necessarily lead to an associate or a bachelor's or a master's degree, and be nimble enough to recognize the regional and statewide economic and workforce demands so that we can be that partner for the industries in our area to provide them with workforce ready graduates, whether that's a badge, a certificate, a thread of courses. That's an area where we see that we can contribute to the economy of the Commonwealth in significant ways.
And building on what Bashar just said, also The workforce in Pennsylvania, the Chancellor's office and across the region, we've been doing workforce assemblies, really investigating and doing the research of the regional needs for what people need to reskill, to re-up, to finish their degrees, to advance their degrees, whether it's skill level or it's an advanced graduate degree or medical school. You know, there are all the ranges that we offer together as a trio. We can really put the best forward for that. And a couple of examples have to do with, we've been trimming down some of our second language learning across our campuses. Well, we shouldn't be trimming that down. We should be leveraging the best across the three campuses. And so we're excited about that piece. The second piece, people talk about demographics, and we're all moaning about all the decrease in the high school graduates and in the region. And yes, that is true. We don't have as many high school graduates, but we have a tremendous workforce need for training and education that has to do with our working adults who are post-traditional age. And this is the market that we have not served well within the PASHE system. We've been very focused on the high school graduates, but we have a tremendous opportunity to really bring people along to get their academic dreams and their career dreams advanced. And we can do that well. And that's an opportunity to gain a market in a time when shrinking markets, you know, if you don't change the way you deliver things, and we can do both. And so we are excited about this potential that we've got in the Western region.
Thank you, Dale. The only other comment I'd make is to really remember that our goal is to make sure the services our students need are delivered to them in a very personal way, so that we are not abandoning our students' needs. I think we can all talk about almost a third of our students are first generation college students. And we have to be both proud of that and realistic in that they come with needs that sometimes we cannot anticipate. Having high touch personal on-campus experiences and services for them continues to be one of the key drivers in everything we're doing. Because if we ignore that, essentially what we're then saying, student first and student success are no longer our priority, and that is just not the case. This is all driven by what can we do in an exemplary way to meet the needs of more students, not fewer students.
That's great. Do you want to move to the next couple of slides? I think just go through some of the opportunities. Then I'm going to invite, I know there's some, obviously maybe ask other presidents if they wanted to say anything before Sharon goes into the financial reviews. And I know that Trustee Crawford from Mansfield and Trustee Chafee from Edinburgh are both with us in case they would also like to make any remarks just to add to the flow. So why not go through the next couple and then we'll pause at a natural point there.
Thank you, Dan. So this is really in some ways a high level early conversations between our provosts here in the Northeast of areas where we believe there is robust opportunities for collaborating and using our strengths to advance those strengths and create a broader impact on the region. As I think most of you might know, Bloomsburg's nursing program has been incredibly successful. We have a 95% licensing pass rate on the license exam the first time students take it. So those are the kinds of examples of how we can really broaden our impact on students of the region and beyond. So nursing, health science and health professions, business, finance and accounting, teacher preparation. We expect a large number of retiring teachers to be to take place in the Commonwealth over the next decade, and COVID has only exacerbated or sped up the retirement conversation for in-service teachers. I think we can be a model for how do we prepare teachers, and it's in our blood, it's in our history. Many of us were normal schools. So I think those are the kinds of things we need to be talking about, focusing on, and making sure we continue to be the brand and the conversation and the destination of choice, because we should own that market, not have to defer to others on it. And you can read the others. And then we drilled down a little bit more to see what opportunities exist if we were to begin looking at different modalities of delivery. And you can see some of the things we've learned actually from COVID, which could be a blessing in disguise. The ability of our faculty to really be incredibly nimble and pivot and deliver curricula in a non-traditional face-to-face way. Bloomsburg has an AACSB accredited College of Business. We can see many pathways between Mansfield and Lock Haven for students to start there and finish their business degree here at Bloom in some way so that they can earn a bachelor's degree from an accredited business college. Lock Haven has a physician's assistant program, so the same thing can be gained there by creating guaranteed admission processes for students in the region. So those are the things that provosts have really been talking about, high level and identifying. And then pathways in other areas where students can start at one school, finish at another, start at one university and finish at another. And I think in some ways, the most exciting part of this is looking at small programs that really can be leveraged across the region so that we're not having to, God forbid, put programs in moratorium. If we can, through scale, create niche programs for our students in the region and beyond, and continue to be able to offer them in high quality, but have the necessary enrollment in the region that can accommodate keeping those programs not just surviving, but growing and thriving. Dale, I'll throw it back to you.
Okay, I'm not going to say much more because a lot of what Bashar just has shared with you really applies also to the Western region. The difference that we have in the Western region, of course, is our use of technology and our use with the online platform, which we are going to shore up and build, which will serve not only the West, it will serve the entire PASHE system. And so we understand that many of the universities have online, very strong, robust graduate programs, but the undergraduate core is something that we can not only serve the Western region with, but we can serve the entire PASHE system. What we would like to see is if a student starts their program, traditional student, and they need to step away for a while or take some time out, or, you know, sometimes they go into the service, there's all kinds of things that happen in a student's life that they don't have to step away, that they can continue, but they would do it with a different modality. So they can go from traditional to online formats or the hybrids or back to traditional seamlessly. And also with the undergraduate, we will also be building on some of the online programs, courses, instruction across and leverage the entire system. And that's an additional thing in addition to the three pairings, the trio that we've got. So we're very excited about bolstering those and strengthening up those opportunities for our students, which would enhance their progression to graduation, which would also enhance their ability to get an advanced level in the workforce. So we're very excited about that. So we'll probably go on to the next slide.
Could you hold up real quick and go back to that other slide? So with the opportunities to sustain low enrolled and at-risk programs, I see foreign languages, history, social sciences, arts and humanities, chemistry, and physics. Is that low enrolled programs, and it not only at the universities they're being integrated, but at non-integrated universities?
Alex, I don't think I understand your question.
Will this be, if this is like an online service, will we be providing, will there be collaboration between other universities to sustain these programs?
Yes, there would be opportunities for students who anywhere in the system to be able to take this. Yeah.
Yeah, if I can jump in there maybe just for a second, Dale. So there was a period of time before integration was like live and real in our, even at the concept level. And we were thinking about, this was during the spring, really early spring, late winter. We were thinking about, future trajectories. Before the board meeting, we presented, here's some options for the system to pursue. And Cal and Clarion were already thinking at that time, and they had been, I think, since February, although Jerry and Dale, correct me if I'm wrong, about expanding and, aggressively thinking about, how to provide undergraduate degree and degree completion programs. And as that was presented, that idea was presented and began to take shape amongst the presidents, it generated lots of very animated conversations about, how online access to courses within the general education curriculum had enormous benefits across the system, and some of our most animated conversations around that topic. So I think we see those opportunities as well.
Well, and I also think it's really important for us to work in concert with one another across the system and not cannibalize opportunities. We really need to compete less and work together more. That's one thing that redesign has taught us. Certainly, we're always going to be competitive to some extent, but the point is we have to share the resources so that the costs go down for the students. In the end, they have to be able to graduate timely and pay less and not have as much debt when they graduate, or no debt at all.
That's great. Anything else on this slide? I was going to invite others to chime in if they wanted to just add perspective.
And I wouldn't mind saying a word or two.
Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, going back to the other slide, if we can just jump back a second. I wanted to underscore that we've had really robust conversations so far, and I think we've only begun to scratch the surface. And if you look at this slide, it's the word potential is underlined, and there's a reason for that, because we think there's a lot more potential here to be uncovered. And you know, this is going to be a very inclusive process that's going to involve and is going to require many people at our respective universities to have input and to help us shape that. And we're going to be intentional about inviting that kind of input. It's very critical for the success of this integration. So I just don't want anyone to look at these slides and think, oh, this is the plan now. You know, this is just teasing out what the potential might look like. This is just a taste of the potential flavors. We have a lot more work to do, and that work needs to include many, many people. I think, as Dale said, the key is affordability, right? Making our programs more affordable. Imagine a 3-year baccalaureate. If we could come up with a way to produce a 3-year baccalaureate that will cost our students less, that you could achieve in a shorter period of time. Leveraging our strengths, maintaining our identity, so very important. Maintaining local identity, maintaining local engagement with our students and figuring out how to best to do that. I do think there's a potential for expanding markets. I've been talking about reaching out to the post-traditional adult learner market for a long time, and I'm pleased to see this as a key feature of both the triads, both in the East and the West. I think we have an awful lot of potential there to meet that achievement gap of adult learners, and also to reach, we were talking about diversity, also to address our equity agenda and to reach out more to underrepresented students and to serve them better as well. Thank you.
And this is Jerry. I'll just add, Dale and Bashar both said it very well, but I just want to say that we see this integration as an opportunity to shape our universities for decades to come, and to meet the demand where it exists, increase access to new markets that we've talked about, and foster enrollment growth. California, Clarendon, and Edinburgh, as you know, we are very proud members of the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education, and each of us has our own long-standing history, identity, and campus culture, and we believe the opportunity is there for all 3 of our universities to thrive under this integration plan. We view the integration as an opportunity to combine forces and build on our strengths, creating exciting new opportunities for our university, and most of all, and most important, for our students, and which will then further the state system's redesign.
This is Barbara Chafee, trustee at Edinburgh University, and the chancellor probably has heard me say this numerous times. But one of the things that I would hope that we not forget, and actually one of the callers during the public comment sessions brought this up, is that we need to continue to address and expand and grow our disability community. So disabled, whether it's physically disabled, autism, across the board. And we have a campus within the 3 that are physically designed for it, that has the courses to deal with it, and then has the courses that also, let's say nursing, art therapy, and others that are helpful with that audience. The other advantage, not only for what we can do at that campus, for expanding and again, growing the disabled community. I understand it's a little more expensive student, but we need to figure out ways to address that. But we have an abundance of housing. And those students prefer to be on campus and in housing. And so I think that we need to consider how important that diversity is in the past, not this administration of PASHE, but in the past when the universities were being measured on their diversity levels within the metrics. The state system refused to put disabled in as a diversity count, which sort of mind-boggling. But I hope we don't forget that audience, and it did come up in public comment today as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chancellor, this is Steve Crawford from Mansfield. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see some of you again. My old friend Sam Smith, Speaker Smith, nice to see you. A couple of observations on behalf of Mansfield. I can't let this go. We knew this was coming. We knew this was coming 6 years ago. We presented what was called the white paper to Frank Brogan. And we said, you know, we may very well be the canary in the mine here, but when you look at the trends and look at what's happening in higher education, we're deeply concerned about Mansfield, of course, but we are also deeply concerned about where the system may be headed. So that's all I'll say about what happened in the past. There are a lot of places we could blame, including we could blame the Thornburg administration and the Corbett administration and the Rendell administration and on and on and on it goes, but that's really not very useful. I think we need to look forward, and the trustees at Mansfield are encouraged by what's happening. We're concerned. We're a little concerned about being the small fish in the big pond, but when you look at the economic impact that our institution has to the region, when you look at the accessibility and affordability opportunities that Mansfield affords to the kids in that region and elsewhere, this makes sense. I'm a native of Bloomsburg, almost went to Bloomsburg, but I was smart enough to not live at home and go to college. That would have been a bad experience for everyone all around. So off I went to Mansfield, and my my little political science degree from Mansfield has served me quite well. But I think the philosophy moving forward for us is to maintain the economic engine that is the institution at Mansfield on behalf of the Northern Tier and the educational opportunities that that affords. But then more than that, across the system, is to remember that for every data point and for every slide deck, that represents a kid. And as far as I'm concerned, the state system of higher education and the institutions therein still provide the best opportunity for kids, working class kids, first generation college students, and others who value education in that getting the best education you can for the value. That affords them the best opportunity. My son just graduated from Millersville, for instance. So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. And he doesn't have any debt. So good for him, good for us. But we look forward to this. We believe that the difficult parts are to come when you get to the blocking and the tackling and those kinds of things. But we're encouraged. So press on.
I don't want to follow my trustee. His comments have been great. And I just want to reemphasize that this is all student focused. Everything that we're doing with integration is focused on the success of students. That needs to be on the forefront of all that we do here and all the actions that we take. So Mansfield is leading this initiative, I think, strongly on our campus, and we look to be continuing to lead it as we move forward in the coming weeks and months.
No, if I could add, as we're developing the teams and as we're moving to the next phase of the implementation planning, the teams will have full representation of our constituents, our students. We are going to make sure that we're inclusive in who we invite, that the faces that are representative of all Pennsylvanians. And there will be much involvement going forward so that the plans are good and solid and really build for the generations to come. We do owe the citizens of Pennsylvania a wonderful education. And if we realign things right now, this will be going on for generations. And most people are pretty darn excited. Yes, the devil is in the details, but we at Clarion have had many names over the years since we started. And at one time we were Carrier Seminary. And so we change and we move on, and we will embrace our past and go forward to build a good future with good partners.
And if I could, yeah. I'm sorry, were you? No, go ahead.
Quickly, just to make, add my 2 cents. One, the potential for growth. I think that's very important and very exciting. The other one that has been mentioned, but not as much emphasized, is the online potential, especially the non-traditional student market. And that is an area that we can do a lot better with, integrated entity. That's very exciting too. I wanted to, add those 2 things.
I appreciate that. And if I could just, I'll jump in for a second and then we'll continue, because I just wanted to express my appreciation, first of all, that this whole session, which is obviously so important and so critical to the meetings, our quarterly meetings, are really being led and taken over by our presidents and trustees, and these are the voices that we need to hear, because obviously, you all own it, and that's the way it gets done. So I just want to express my appreciation for that, for what you are saying, because you're really reminding us of the first and most important principle of redesign, the most important pillar, which is student success. And so I really appreciate your reiterating that. And the only other thing I want to say is, as we keep going, Dale, I think you alluded to this, but I'll just state very directly that it's important that we allow ourselves to follow the process, because we don't have all the answers right now. And frankly, even if we thought we did, more questions, many more questions and challenges are going to arise anyhow. And I'll just make a little analogy. I'm learning the importance of that because I just enrolled in a doctorate program. I am scared to death about the prospect of writing a dissertation. And what our program faculty keep telling us is trust in the process, trust in the process, one step at a time. So I just, sort of offer that analogy here because that's the only way we're going to proceed. We have to continue to get more comfortable with this, to understand better what it's all about, where it's leading to, and most importantly, to have all of the details being worked out. And that only happens through the process. And we have to follow the process, right? Because, Act 50 lays it out pretty clearly. So we can't jump ahead, nor do we want to follow behind. And so trust the process will be.
Yep. Madam Chair, may I make a comment, please?
Sure.
Yep. This is Nancy Basta from Bloomsburg University. This is the first time I've been in this forum, so thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate all the work that these teams are doing and all the work that all of you do, kind of dedicating your time to this. I think we've got some real challenges and share the sentiment of that's been shared in terms of opportunities. I'd ask, as we go through this, there sounds like there's integration opportunities, there's shared services opportunities, and there may be opportunities that we haven't even thought of. So I'd really ask and push that we keep an open mind to the different possibilities. As I read some of these slides, it kind of gives the impression that it's a little bit of a foregone conclusion where we'll end up. I don't think that's the tenor of the conversation, but that the material there kind of gave me that impression. So I'd ask that we continue to push on the data and let the data, lead us to the right conclusions. And as we think about this next phase of work, I think getting a little more granular in some of the data that's available and sharing it with a broader group of folks sooner might be helpful. I think we can help brainstorm and be part of the process and part of the solutions, particularly at the local institution level. And I trust that in this next phase that will, it sounds like that's the plan. So I think that's a great plan. And I think we've got to revisit some of the assumptions that are currently being used in the financials. I think some of them may be best case scenario assumptions that, a lot has changed kind of very quickly in a few months. And so some may be realistic, some we may need to revisit. And I think, we've got to, in these integrations, still work towards sustainability. And at some point, we've got to deal with, historical debt that some institutions may have, and really think through what does that mean for, if we go down the integration path, how do we deal with historical debt? And that historical debt, could unfold itself in a multitude of different ways that may or may not be in this existing data. So clearly a lot of work for us to do, and I'd ask that we, think of that criteria as we move forward to find the right solution for each institution and the system as a whole, and, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate those comments. And I'm going to call on former Speaker and Vice Chair Sam Smith, who actually followed instructions and raised his hand.
Yeah, well, having been in the chair, it's nice when they do.
Seriously.
Parenthetically,
sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay.
It's totally fine.
That's okay. I'm patient. That's one thing I have going for myself, usually. Parenthetically, I'm just glad to hear that Steve Crawford and I are more or less on the same page. It's nice not to be having to go head to head with him. Just one comment on this overall presentation, and particularly from the two triads. I would observe that I would think all the schools, even those schools that are in pretty good shape overall, are going through similar exercises, albeit a little different perspective of having to join forces with another entity. But all of the schools, I believe, are or should be making the same value judgments that was just presented to us. And I just think it's important to make that point. I kind of throw that at the chancellor a little wee bit because I think it's that broad balancing act of a system and taking advantage of the systemness, I think was one of your words in the past, Chancellor. But we're all looking at these same challenges, opportunities. What do we need to transition to provide to fulfill our mission? So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Sam. Any other comment at this time?
If not, Cindy, I'm going to turn over to Sharon, who's going to go through the financial review, which is actually the meat of the work that we're presenting.
I forgot we hadn't gotten to that yet.
Yeah, so
thank you.
The reason I just to gloss over, the reason I wanted to do this is, this is probably, this is the hardest thing any one of us has ever really tried to do. It's been interesting. I think I've probably been thinking about it pretty longer as long as anyone else in this group. And and working with so many people around these topics. And what's so interesting, and the reason that I think the point that I wanted to help emphasize here with colleagues is that this is really hard. There are enormous numbers of concerns. There's a lot at stake here. It's also incredibly emotional, because of the history and the legacy in the past. And this change is hard. This kind of change is really hard. But I also wanted to, to sort of use this as an opportunity to kind of, help land something I've observed, which is that the people who are, as they get engaged in the conversation, and every once in a while, I've been privileged to talk with many people about this activity, and there are so many concerns, and they need to be taken incredibly seriously. But every once in a while, you get into a room, and for whatever reason, people just start imagining what could be. for our students, and the sense of excitement and the sense of opportunity. And here we are. We have been in recession management. I mean, we have been in aggressive recession management for 12 years, probably more than 12 years. I've only been doing it here for 2. It's horrible. It's demoralizing. It's soul destroying. And then and watch people who have been in these institutions, and maybe if they weren't here, they've been doing recession management, the last protocol, discover the opportunity to build new. It is so powerful. And so many of the insights that we wanted to share derive from precisely those conversations, when every once in a while a group of people will get out in front of "we can't" and stop looking in the rearview mirror and look forward, and are able just for a moment to suspend their disbelief and to think for a second that the policies and the structures and they're all ours to shape and change and control and to manage, and to step out into that space. It's really been one of the most inspiring things I've done in my career. It'll probably kill me, but it's really been that exciting. And I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's spoken, who has been involved in some or all of these conversations.
Thank you.
All right, with that, I want to turn over to the meat of the work, to Sharon, who is going to walk through the review. I am going to make the caveat that this is not intended as a perfect reflection of what a P&L will be for those who are into that kind of language for an integrated university. It was a very intentionally designed as a simplistic exercise to give us some modicum of confidence that the juice might be worth the squeeze, that the planning process that we're going into, the hard planning process, might actually be worth going into. So with those caveats, I'm turning over to you, Sharon.
Thanks, man. Randy, can you go to the next slide? I'm just going to pause for a moment. And unfortunately, I think we're moving into the drier part of the presentation.
No, this is the part we've all been waiting for, Sharon. Come on.
None of the exciting ideas and market opportunities are actually built into any of the projections. So, the big qualifier, you heard a lot about growth and retention initiatives and things for student success. All of those come in the next phase. So what we're looking at is really what was required for this first review according to the Act. And they really looked at projections for universities as standalone entity, and then projections of an integrated university, focusing in on enrollment, revenue, expenditure trends, net assets. And I'll talk a little bit about the assumptions that we used. And those individual and integrated entity projections are in the appendix to the document. So we did those financial projections and we reviewed them across 3 of the financial sustainability indicators: enrollment, operating margin, and primary reserve ratio, to align the analysis to the board policy on sustainability. And just want to talk a little bit about the 2 scenarios that we ran, the standalone and the integrated, and the assumptions that went into them. For the standalone analysis, we based the assumptions on the CPPs, which are the comprehensive planning process documents, which are the university's budget and current year and projected budgets for unrestricted financial projections. And that combines the E&G and the auxiliary activities. We used their current year and their 2-year projections through 22-23. And then the university is projected out through 25-26. And these were built on consistent assumptions for changes in revenue and expenditure categories. The baseline, it's important to note that the baseline assumes all the activities that the universities are currently planning to implement to achieve a balanced budget and remain sustainable, including all of their cost savings initiatives over this year and the next 2 years. So that's the baseline before the projected out years. Enrollment trends were university trends, and they were based on historic data, the university's, recruitment, retention, and enrollment and management initiatives, and they were projected by each of the universities. On the revenue side for appropriation tuition fees, we did assume a conservative 1% increase in these in the outer years when we did the projections. So they are, you will see that flow through. For expenditures, for personnel expenses, which is kind of the largest of our expense categories, we assumed an overall increase of around 2.3% for salary benefits. In the outer years, when the collective bargaining agreements end, that's 23-24 through 25-26, actuals were projected in the years up to that. The universities didn't make any material change in the number of employees in those outer years. So what you see flowing through in the outer years was provided also by the universities. One of the large impacts, or one of the large adjustments we did make for the projections was the impact of COVID. COVID has an impact obviously on all campus activities, but particularly on room and board for this fiscal year. So we wanted to assume that room and board and auxiliaries would return to normal beginning in the 21-22 projection. So we didn't want to use that baseline and just project outward. So that's an important adjustment that we made. So that was how each of the standalone went. For the integrated universities, we used the same, with the exception that the new entity for each of the trios would come into existence in 22-23, and that savings would start to be achieved in the 23-24 year. And we projected savings just as a conservative integrated savings estimate, about 20% of administrative activities. And those were all administrative activities with the exception of those that directly serve students. To the point everyone was just discussing, students are our core mission and at the heart of what we do. And we didn't want to make any savings assumptions on those student facing activities. So there was a 20% savings adjustment, and that was for the integrated entities only. And the result was that, for both, you see positive viability. Oh, Randy, you can go back to the enrollment slide. So the next slide here shows, so those are the assumptions that you can see kind of the detail in the appendix. And then what this shows you is just the assumptions or the trends for enrollment. You can see each of the individual lines for the universities in the West and the universities in the Northeast. And then you can see them as a combined entity for the CPP. Again, this was CPP data provided by the universities. We did make one adjustment, and there's a footnote there where Edinboro, we did do a conservative adjustment on their enrollment to a cumulative 3%. We did make that one adjustment just to make sure that we weren't projecting out any financials that may not be achievable. But both the West and the Northeast show combined enrollment projections in the positive, which would then flow through to have a positive impact on revenue and operating margins. Again, no new growth that we talked about is assumed in any of these projections for any of the new markets or opportunities that were discussed previously. So this is just kind of current state analysis. And then you want to flip to the next slide, Randy. So using those enrollment projections, you can flow through with the assumptions on revenue for appropriations, tuition, financial aid, et cetera, that we talked about. You can see the impact on operating margin and on the primary reserve ratio. So again, aligning to financial sustainability. If you look at each of the individuals in the West and the East, you can see each of the individual lines show their individual operating margin, and then the combined where you can see the impact of the savings potential from an integration and what that does when you combine the entity. And I'll speak briefly to each of the indicators. The first is the operating margin. From a sustainability perspective, we were really looking for an operating margin of 2% or more. Both of the integrated projections look to be achieving higher than our 2% target. So that's as a combined entity, so that's showing a positive. On the primary reserve ratio, there we are looking for a 40% amount. The Northeast moves as a combined entity significantly closer to this goal of 40%. Again, without any new initiatives or additional savings opportunities. The West, though, just as you can see, the West from a primary reserve ratio is constrained by the use of reserves and cash and the cash needs of several of the universities over the next 3 years as they move to become sustainable between getting themselves to that balanced position in the next 3-year period. So this coupled with, the debt, as we also mentioned, does put a more challenged primary reserve ratio position, but it still moves them to the positive. And as we go through the implementation process, we're going to need to look at the growth opportunities and factor those in, as well as debt, as was previously mentioned, as part of the next steps of the financial analysis. So, but both do move.
Actually has a question here.
Yeah.
It was just about the primary reserve ratios for the Western trio. Do you believe that we can get that closer to 40%?
That's hard. It will take some time to get it to the 40%. I mean, that is the goal. What we have in front of us is a couple tough years that have drawn down those reserves. And so to build them back up, we really need to look at the growth initiatives and look at the debt.
And Sharon, can I just actually use this as an educational opportunity? We talk about sustainability, our sustainability, the board's sustainability policy. Sustainability is not about running a balanced budget year on year. Sustainability is about getting, running a balanced budget year on year and getting to a 40% primary reserve ratio. And I think that's something which is often lost on folks. Our primary reserve is it's our strategic investment. It is the future, and we gotta reclaim it. Sorry, Sharon.
That's okay.
Always an educator. I apologize.
Okay. Randy, you want to go to the next slide, and there's 2 more, and then I'll pause. Just to note that, as the Chancellor has mentioned, we have already started conversations with the accreditation entities. We need to look, as decisions are made between October and April around programs and the accreditation process, we need to factor in those timelines. So we don't want to factor a financial projection in too early based on accreditation timelines. We need to align the academic decisions with the financial impacts during the next stage. But that's obviously a critical point as well for the next several months. And those conversations have started. Just additional impact considerations as we move forward for the community. Obviously, given, as the prior slide showed, there are some universities that are experiencing distress currently and in the next few years. That distress makes it difficult for them to reinvest. So if they remain, within their own state without integrating, that distress is going to continue and will be harder to address. And so pulling together and looking at new opportunities, new markets, how do they share, will help to alleviate some of that distress, but it will also allow them to be in a much better position and address the next risk, which is when the next demographic decline hits. And so this isn't just about, as the Chancellor mentioned, getting to a balance in the next 3 years and getting stable. Is how do we make sure that we're ready when demographics change again, and we're building the universities for the students of the future, and having them positioned to be in that right spot. So, from a community impact, there'll be additional analysis as part of the implementation planning process that's required by the Act. And then again, the Act also requires us to look at alumni foundations, affiliates. All of that will be part of the next steps as decisions are made at that more granular level. So again, this was high-level financials. What does it look like if the entities come together with some conservative projections around growth and savings? Is it worth moving forward? Do we see something that's sustainable at the end of the process, so that we can go into the next phase, get the details, and then we have to refresh the financials all over again as part of the next steps of the process. So I will pause there, because then the next goes into the next steps. Let's see if there's any other questions on the drier part of the, of the presentation.
It's the most interesting part.
I did actually have a question, and it's more from my own experience with the affiliated entities such as our student services, the SSIs. How will they play a role in merge together or support student activity fee usages at universities in integration?
That's
next steps. Okay.
That's the next step. Yeah, we have to look at all of that, because each university has those, and alumni associations, and the the foundations, and based on the decisions, and what does that mean for each of those entities.
And if I could suggest that we are going to have working groups looking at those specific things with students on them.
The great thing about the financial review was that it did give us a moment, at least, to ask the question we never got to ask. We do budget planning on an individual university basis. We never get to do the work that says, okay, what would happen if? The most frustrating thing about it was it didn't get. We had to delay asking all those questions, which are the really important ones too. So, all right. Anything else on the financial review? Otherwise, I'm going to go to the next steps. And just to close on the financial review, just to remind folks, or it's probably not remind them, it may not have been clear. So the way we're approaching this entire process, this is our strategy. We're not outsourcing our strategy. We get help and support from various great people. But the approaches that we take, the methodologies that we use, the questions that we ask, they're ours, and they will continue to be, at least so long as this is how, leadership does not outsource its strategy. I don't intend to start doing that. Okay, let's move on to the next steps. Randy, next slide. Sharon, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So the Act has some very specific requirements that we have to provide as part of the implementation plan to the board. And so to get to the information that we need in the implementation plan, we need to go through the detail design sessions. And that really is talking about our current state and where we are today, and the what if analysis to say, what is this future that we're building? What does it look like? What does it mean? And go through a variety of sessions. As was mentioned, there's academics, there's student, non-academics, governance, looking at debt, community, alumni relations. There's all kinds of things that we have to look at to say, if we are 3 today, what would it look like tomorrow as 1? And then from there to look at the impact. So what does it mean to go from the current state to the future? What can you do first? What may take 2 to 3 years because of a technology change that needs to be implemented to support it, or a legal contract issue, or an accreditation issue? So how do you sequence the implementation based on the impacts of the decisions of the future state? And so getting to that current state to the future, then what are the impacts of the decisions that we're making, and how does that affect the timeline? And then to build out that implementation plan and timeline and refresh the finances to say, if this is the future state and these are the decisions, and what does the financial package look like now with this future state in mind, so that we know that if we have an implementation plan, just as an example, that could be 2 to 3 years, that we're projecting things at the right time in the financials based on the implementation plan. Certain things are going to come in first, certain things are going to need to be on hold until something else occurs, and we build those financials based on those decisions. So that's the work. It's a lot of work. And I am happy that we have very excited teams to get started on it. But it is really work at the university level, to be led as they really envision what the future is going to look like for the system as we move forward. All of that will then roll to the implementation plan with the financials that will be provided to the board. And we are again targeting April for that document.
So let me talk a little bit about the planning process, and I'm not going to go through the word by word, but so basically the financial review was, as you see, a pretty technocratic exercise where we basically took budget projections that we routinely collected at the Office of the Chancellor and ran them through a model of our design, while working with leadership at universities on the more vision-y, what could it be like? Those were the two real component parts to it. So a lot of the work, the framing and the execution was really done at the Chancellor's office with routine engagement with the presidents and their leadership. As we move into the next phase, that's now going to need to shift. We're going to get the planning closer to the ground, and so imagine, if you will, and what we're focusing on is integration teams in each of the regions, right? The integration teams will have, each team will have a lead, Presidents Pearson and Hannah, the other presidents, and then leads of each of the teams doing specific bodies of work. You can imagine a team on leadership and governance, and one on the academic program, and one on other of the functional areas that we're going to need to work through. And the support will shift as well, so that to ensure that the integration teams in each of the regions and their functional sub-teams all have the kind of analytical, project management, other supports that they need in order that they can do the work and also engage in the appropriate levels of consultation, gather input, et cetera. So that's what we're looking at a high level. And if you go to the next slide, it's just really another more detailed view of the same thing. Where you see sponsorship at the Office of the Chancellor office's role. We'll still have a team here, me and a number of members of my staff, Presidents Pearson and Hannah. Our job is really to frame the process, create specific charges and guidelines and milestones and deliverables, and and get the supports needed to ensure the work can get done at the university level through the university teams and the functional and the sub teams looking at functional areas. And then if you go to the next slide, this is really a sort of a lesson learned from system redesign and actually from our work with the system leadership group that will make sure that each team has a charter that defines, membership, what their roles and responsibilities are, what their obligations are with respect of, any kind of race, what the decision rights look like, expectations about timelines, et cetera. Make sure that every team has the appropriate level of supports and resources. And we've also asked, and this has really grown out of the kind of visioning, very early preliminary visioning work that we reported in the first part of this presentation with Presidents Pearson and Hannah, is that there's a real interest, desire amongst I think you're hearing it beginning to come out, is that this is an opportunity to think big and to go big, and so and the thought is let's make sure that these the work that we're doing, let's target it at really expanding student opportunity in measurable ways, really expanding student success and affordability outcomes in measurable ways. So establishing goals and really establishing stretch goals. The needs of the Commonwealth are that great. The needs of our students and their communities are that great. The needs of our universities are that great that we have to think big. We have to think big and execute big. So really challenge ourselves in that regard. I think that's the last. I don't know if that's the last slide we can ask. Yeah, go back one more, Randy. Sorry, to the last slide. And then I just wanted to ask, Dale and Bashar. So this anticipates a significant transition in the leadership, really into their hands with their teams. And the presidents in the regions. Me and my team, of course, are delighted by, and we're happy to be here in a client service role and support. But I wanted, Dale or Bashar, if you wanted to have any further conversation about this the next steps, the planning process.
We're ready.
Dan already, and I think both Rob and Charles said it best. We're at mile zero of the marathon, and it's going to be inclusive, transparent, and I think Madam Chairwoman said it best. We're going to let the data guide us as we assess and evaluate and move forward. This is going to be a lot of work, but hopefully it's exciting, fun work, but it's a heavy lift. And Dale and I will keep each other sane.
You promise?
No.
Oh, goodness me. Okay. I think that's it.
Okay.
That, basically just some timelines. Obviously, we've got a lot of work the next couple of weeks to stand up the governance structure. We're lining up the supports. I think Sharon told us that we start on Monday, so we get the weekend off, so rest up. And that's where we're planning. So we'll leave it there. Any questions, comments? Open to all of the above.
Dan, I'm not sure I gave you permission for the weekend off. But
I said they were getting a weekend off. I know.
Oh, okay. All right. Any
Dan,
questions?
I have one comment. I was trying to find where to raise my hand here, and I can't find it on my screen. Comment is back several years ago, I chaired a committee that took Allentown College from Allentown College to DeSales University. And one of the areas we found the greatest angst happened to be among alumni. I didn't see alumni specifically listed on slide 28 when we talked about future impact, but please make sure that they are included beyond just the trustees, but the alumni out there, because they're the ones who ultimately, hopefully, donate a lot of money to us in the long run.
That's a great point, Tom. Thank you. Yeah.
Good point. And anything else? Is there anything in the participants tab? And I don't see any hands there.
No.
Okay. Okay. All right. I think then we can move ahead to put a motion on the table for a vote. There's another opportunity anyway after a motion is made and seconded for discussion. But is there a motion that the board affirms the ongoing institution process or to proceed with the development of appropriate integration plans for review by the board in 2021? May I have that motion? And a second.
Second.
Thank you very much. And before I ask if there's any further discussion, and this would be, by the way, board members only permitted to have discussion after a motion is made. I just want to remark that I think this is incredible work. There has so much thought that's gone into it. Yes, I know, there were a lot of existing data points, and fortunately, the system has been good. And the universities have been good in collecting data, developing models on risk factors, and collecting that data. So we really ought to, I think at least pat ourselves on the back for that. We didn't know much what to do with it before, but now we do. And so, I think that's actually enabled us to have some expediency with this process. But incredible work, Dan, by the presidents. Thanks to all of you, Dale and Bashar, and all the presidents who have been working on this, Sharon and your team on the financial piece of it and the governance piece of it. Really, truly incredible path-breaking work. Is there any further discussion from board members on the action item on the table? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you.
Aye.
Okay, we got that last aye in. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries, and it's a big motion. Let's not just kind of say check that one off the list. This is huge. Thank you. Randy, help me out here. Are we going to item 7B, or are you suggesting a 5-minute break first?
A 5-minute break so that we can plow through the final items and be done. Just 5 minutes.
Okay. So I have 4:27, so, exactly 5 minutes from now. Okay, 4:32, we'll reconvene. Thank you.
Board members, as you return, you're welcome to reactivate your video so we know you're back. Now we can get rolling.
Love that chime.
It's a little incongruous with the really crazy orange thing screaming at you.
Terrific. Okay, are we back?
Board members, if you could just reactivate your screen when you come back, your video, then we'll know you are back at your seat.
All right. Look, I think it looks like we're back, right? I'm just looking my pages, more or less. Okay. Why don't we reconvene? We are now on the next agenda item, which is item 7B in your packet. Andy, were you going to introduce this action item?
I am, Madam Chair. Randy, can I just have a thumbs up that you can hear me all right?
Loud and clear.
All right, great. Thank you. Good afternoon, board members, presidents, and guests. First of all, what Randy has on the screen is the draft that was sent to you with a caveat, and I'm going to start off by thanking our faculty liaison, Dr. Jamie Phillips, pointed out an omission in a word, and that would appear right there on section 1E. Under was missed. There were a couple nicks and tucks, but that was the one. So that does not appear in the materials that were sent to you, but it is on the motion that will be before you. So thank you, Dr. Phillips. So Act 50 of 2020, are also known as the 2020 amendments to our enabling legislation, which is all of you know, Act 188 of 1982, requires that the Board of Governors develop policies and procedures by which the board may create, expand, consolidate, transfer, or affiliate in an institution. This policy is the statutorily required tool that the system needs to effect the lawful changes. It allows the system to do all those things and only those things that Act 50 of 2020 authorizes in terms of what we refer to as integration. The policy mirrors the process established in the law. It does not foreshadow any outcomes, but rather establishes in policy the requirements that the legislature demands of us to move forward in the redesign process. Likewise, it recognizes in section B5 the timeline established by the law to approve final implementation. You may recall that Act 50 has a sunset provision, and it affirms those actions taken by the chancellor to date in this regard. So if there are any questions or concerns, Executive Vice Chancellor Minnick and myself will be happy to respond. But in summary, it is, except for the numeration, where we have numbers, the statute has letters and vice versa. It is pulled from that and gives us the authority now to move forward because the law requires that the board pass a policy just to go down this process. And I think you've heard from Executive Vice Chancellor Minnick a lot of the requirements that she outlined a few moments ago in her recitation. Madam Chair?
Great, thank you. Appreciate that, Andy, very much. So everyone is understanding this. We're simply required to have among our own policies one that mirrors what Act 50 gives us the prerogative to do, the specifications and over the timeline, right? So Andy, I just want to ask one question. Do we, when Act 50 itself is sunsetted, does that automatically sunset our board policy, or do we, come back and formally sunset it?
Madam Chair, I would say there's not an automatic sunsetting language in this policy, but we do from time to time review all policies that are moot by either by law or by time frame or what we do, and this would come up in that rotation.
Terrific. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, first I'm going to call for a motion that the board approves policy 2020-03, Act 50 implementation policy as required by Act 50 of 2020. Is there such a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
A second. I heard a second. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion? Board members only, and please feel free to just jump in.
Cindy, this is Sam. I had one question, and I mean, not to derail anything or anything like that, but the step 3 about the public comment, and it rolls right into step 4 implementation on that slide that Dan showed us at the beginning of this whole session. But I think it's embodied in this policy. What are we going to do? How does this policy allow us to go through the public comment period? We have what, 60 days, I guess.
60 days, yeah.
And still adjust the plans for it. I mean, it provides it in words, but I'm thinking, is it practical to maybe to have a chance to take in public comment? And it's not insignificant, the amount, and then react and alter the plans before they would go into the final step.
That you're just talking about, is there enough time?
Yeah.
It'll essentially.
Yeah, really.
Dan, you want to?
Yeah, I can take some of that, but I'm going to also rely on support from Cody and Andy. So there are provisions in the Act about that. The January decision date is not a firm date; it's a target date, as is the April date for the plans, right? So we're targeting April for a plan, and so I mean, when I talk about it, not in the slide in the words, but when I talk about it, the soonest we could see a plan would be April. The soonest we could have an approval would be July. The soonest we could have an integrated university entering its first cohort of students would be August 2022. But that assumes we hit each of those, thresholds and get through them. And so, yeah. But I don't know if Andy or Cody wanted to chime in.
Sam, the Act doesn't specifically contemplate what would happen if there were shifts in the proposed implementation plan. All it states is that we have to propose an implementation plan and then consider comments made during the public comment period. That's my reading of it, at least.
Well, assuming we get that far, I think it's going to be incumbent on us to engage the public comment, the physical comment periods, or the groups of people and whatever we have to do early on in that 60-day period, to give us some room to actually listen, learn, and act.
Yeah.
As I just put this whole thing in, what all's going into it, it's it could be some things that aren't too significant to change, to react to something, but it could require a lot of digging, and I just think we're going to have to be very conscious of that in order to meet this plan. Because as you mentioned, Dan, maybe that's not a hard in statute deadline, but we only have certain windows just given the academic year.
Right.
So, I mean, we have windows, and each window changes things by, 6 months or a year.
Yeah. I know that's exactly right.
That's absolutely understood. I think that's a really good comment. I think as we're, designing the detailed plan to get us, from now until April and April into July, we should design it with that insight in mind and build in, some of that unforeseen, have to make changes kind of time. So just to be conscious of that when we do the detailed design for the, commentary period and period before we have something pretty finalized for the board.
Yeah. And I think there's, the other thing, we'll obviously with a very high level draft of the planning process now, we'll go into detail when we start again next week, is to consult with key stakeholder groups as we go. But by the time a plan is released, if a stakeholder group is surprised by anything, we have not done our job.
I think that's right.
Fair point. That makes sense too.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. But it's still true, Sam, as you say, you never know, and you just have to be prepared. I think you just have to build in sort of like you build a contingency into your budget, a contingency into this time frame.
And we tried to do that in looking at the timelines, because I believe if we look at the April meeting through the 60-day period, there is about another month of before we get to the July meeting to figure out across that whole period of time, what did we learn? To your point, there could be small things or there could be large things, and what are we doing for that final presentation in July? So we're trying to build in time as and the period goes through the whole 60 days, so you could be making those feedback loops and adjustments early on.
Yeah, I think it is going to be a reflexive, iterative process. It's not going to be like in chunks, so to speak, where you have a plan and then you have all the commentary and then you have the revisions. It's going to be iterative as we go along, and I think that's going to facilitate getting this done in time. Any other comments? All right, I'm going to call for a vote on the motion. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, terrific. Policy. Thank you all very much. I am now going to transition. I think this is the last part of the meeting for today. Is that right, Randy? No, yes.
Second to
close
last.
it. Second to last, right. Okay. We're now going to transition into a meeting of the University Success Committee. So just as a reminder, because we're doing our board meetings in this manner rather than meeting in person, the committee meeting takes place in the full forum. So we of course encourage board members to engage in dialogue and discussion, but a reminder that please only committee members should be voting to recommend that the motion move on to the full board, which will happen later. So with that, Tom Muller, if you are ready, Chair of University Success Committee, I'll hand the virtual gavel to you.
I'm ready. I'll take the gavel. Good afternoon and welcome to the late afternoon part of the meeting and probably the drier part of the afternoon. I'm going to ask Teresa to do a roll call of the University Success Committee, please.
Well, certainly. I'm sorry. Okay, Vice Chair Governor Neil Weaver. Governor Nicole Dunlop.
Here.
Representative Brad Roy.
Here.
Secretary Meg Sneed. I know she was on the line.
She was.
Yes.
At some point.
Governor Janet Yeomans.
Here.
All right, everyone is present. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have two items for consideration by the committee today, beginning on page 20 of your agenda. Both of these items, an approval of one of the systems appropriation request and the 5-year capital spending plan, come before the board each year at this time and are required as part of the Commonwealth funding allocation process. The first one is the approval of fiscal year 21-22 educational and general appropriation requests. Last year at this time, we discussed the changes that were occurring in the system's budget processes. I'm pleased to say that the system's new comprehensive planning process, now known as the CPP, replaces the system's previous standalone budget process with an integrated approach to academic program planning, university goals, and the strategies to achieve them, and the financial projections to support programs, goals, and sustainability. The materials provided on pages 20 through 33 have been developed through this year's CPP to support the ongoing educational and general operations of state system universities. In addition to the system's recurring E&G appropriation request that supports the ongoing operations of our universities, the system will continue to request the funds in support of system redesign as we approved last year. So now I would like to turn it over to Sharon to walk us through the budget and appropriations request discussion. Sharon?
Thank you.
Tom, this is Meg really quick. Just letting you know I'm here. I couldn't get off mute.
Oh, great. Good to have you, Meg. I know I saw you before.
Yes, we got that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to walk through both items 1 and 2 that are a part of the motion. And again, just a reminder that the board approves the appropriation request, which supports the E&G fund of the budget, which is the academic, really supporting the academic mission of the system and the universities. This is approximately 1.6 billion in total, or 72% of the overall budget for the system, with the remaining auxiliary and restricted split between about 14% each. So that takes us to our total budget from a system perspective, and with E&G is 1.6 billion of that. So just a few highlights. The major revenue sources are tuition and fees at approximately 61%, with the appropriation that we're talking about today at 29%. Major expenditures are salary and benefits at 74%, with supplies and services around 22% of the fund. We use the university's 2021 budgets to serve as the basis for the 21-22 request, and those are, as Tom noted, in attachment 1 in the board materials. There are several items to note. As part of system redesign, we rolled out additional format changes with this year's submissions. We've aligned the submissions to the board affirmed metrics and the university goals, and made updates to allow easier view of annual revenues and expenditures as compared to strategic investments or use of one-time funds for university initiatives. So it's a clearer picture. From an enrollment perspective, overall, enrollment declines of approximately 2.1% are in the CPP submission, which occurred in early September, which are very closely aligned at the system level to the fall freeze information, which just came in the beginning of October. So we were about 0.1% difference between the CPP submissions and the fall freeze information. So very close in terms of enrollment to drive the revenue projections that you're looking at. The impact of COVID can be seen in the other revenue lines. You have reductions in student fees, which were associated with on-campus activities and corresponding adjustments to expenditures. These changes are anticipated to be one-time changes affecting the 2021 budget and then returning, hopefully, to a more normal pattern for the 21-22 request year. Projected compensation expenditures includes change in pay for the system employee groups and estimated healthcare and pension costs, and those are all in alignment with the collective bargaining agreements and the information that we received from the Commonwealth. And obviously the outlook by university varies based on the impact of COVID, the regional demographics, complement program mix, and the sustainability planning activities that they are undertaking this year and the next 2 years to achieve sustainability. So that is the 2021 overview. I'm going to turn to 21-22, which is the request. We certainly understand the financial situation facing the Commonwealth given the COVID pandemic. We are trying to balance our needs to continue to support the students while providing affordable higher education in Pennsylvania. We're requesting an appropriation increase of 2%, which would be targeted to affordability and access for our students. This is in line with our prior year's request and funding, and will allow the universities to work on net price strategies to maintain and improve student affordability and access during this very difficult time for the state. The assumptions for the request year are also presented in the materials that you have. And just one final note that last year, the board approved system redesign funds. So we will continue to seek that funding to support system redesign as previously approved by the board. And so if you can see the motion on page 20, and I will turn it back to Tom.
Thank you, Sharon. Based on the information that was just shared with us, as outlined on page 20, I move that the committee recommend that the Board of Governors approve first the fiscal year 2021 E&G budgets for the state system, universities, and Office of the Chancellor reflected in attachment 1, beginning on your page 21, as the basis for the system's appropriation request. And 2, a fiscal year 21-22 E&G appropriation request of $487,019,000 an increase of 9.5 million or 2.0%, reflected in attachment 2, beginning on page 28. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Committee members or any discussion? Sorry.
Any board member can any discussion?
There are no hands.
I see no hands, hear no hands. So committee members, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. It's passed. The second and final item on our committee agenda is the approval of the capital spending plan as presented beginning on page 34 of the materials. Annually, the board reviews the 5-year capital spending plan, but approves only the current year of the plan. The attached plan reflects continuity with last year's 5-year planning period. The plan assumes continuation of a $70 million annual allocation of Commonwealth capital appropriations from the governor. All projects in the plan are addressing significant current needs and are necessary regardless of potential future integrations. I would like to turn it back to Sharon now to review this item. Sharon?
Thank you, Tom. Again, within the board materials, page 34 and following, you see the capital spending plan. We received 70 million in annual capital appropriation. The priority has been for demolition projects. In recent years, we have about 43 million for demolition projects. This plan adds an additional 4.5 million for demolition, and that's part of the overall initiatives to try to reduce that physical footprint to help drive savings for universities so that those dollars can be reinvested. All the projects that you see before you were approved by the General Assembly. And we did look at the requests in light of the integrations to make sure that we were bringing things forward that we knew were required regardless of the individual university or if it was an integrated entity. As we move forward, we will obviously over the next several months need to relook at the capital plan based on the recommendations from the integrations to see if there would need to be any adjustments made to the 5-year plan based on the integration assumptions, but that's part of the next steps in that implementation planning process. And so just wanted to provide that as the summary. The majority for this is going to Shippensburg. They received the majority for their science center. The design was funded in 1819 and DGS is currently in the design selection process. And then the next large one is Slippery Rock University with an electrical system upgrade, which is needed due to some failures that are causing outages. And so it's a safety concern and an upgrade required for them. So those are the two primary drivers in this funding plan. And with that, I think I will just turn it back to Tom to see if there are additional questions.
Sharon, thank you. Based on the information we just shared, as outlined on page 34, I move that the committee recommend that the Board of Governors approve the fiscal year 2021 capital spending plan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? It can include board members.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Don Hauser. I'm not a member of the committee, but I do have a question if I could. How does this plan incorporate any additional capital funding as per the negotiated agreement with the Cheney debt?
It does not.
Okay, so how do we account for that and where will we see that in the future?
We account for that through the reduction of the liability on Cheney's books and the movement to the systems books. And when the capital projects that are university funded are invoiced and provided with DGS, we receive those funds to reduce that liability. And I can provide additional data. I believe we talked through the transaction in the January board meeting, and happy to go back through that again.
I was just curious, since we're approving a plan, maybe we see that in the the supporting documents, how that's in there annually for transparency, since we did forgive that debt and knew that it was going to capital spending somewhat. And here we are talking about it and it's not mentioned. I just thought for transparency, we would bring that up and see that somewhere for not only us as board members, but for the public.
Sure, we can certainly add that in.
Good point, Don. Thank you. Any other comments?
How will we know how much is used against the total that we forgave each time we do capital projects every year?
I'm sorry, can you?
Like, will the board next year be updated about how much of that amount was used on the capital projects this year, so that we would know how much is left?
Yeah, so
Agreed to owe to us.
yeah, so for the specifics around the Cheney commitment that the governor did, we can do a separate line item that shows what we have received and how that was, which is separate than the 70. So those are two totally different buckets that we're not drawing down against. So we can provide a kind of running tally against what we've received back.
But Alex, was your question, was it also about how do we know what allocated capital dollars generally and how they're expended?
It was more of how do we know how much is left and how much was used, I think.
Okay.
Of the 45, what have we received? Yeah, we can provide that when we provide the update of the running list.
Representative Roy has his hand up.
Thank you. Okay, looking at the list here on page 36, two of the projects involve additions. The Cope Hall renovation addition at Cheney, and then the BF Library addition and renovation at Edinburgh. I'm just curious, with significantly declined enrollment over the years, why are additions needed? I can certainly see renovating buildings if they need upgraded HVAC, roofs, windows, ADA compliance, things like that. But why are we building additions?
So Aaron, would you like to speak to Cope Hall?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah, Aaron, I didn't know if you'd like to speak.
Yeah, I think that part of it was to, the repairs were more expensive than actually replacing it. So we were able to stretch the dollars and not only upgrade Cope Hall, but several other projects at the same time with the same amount of money that need to be done on the campus. So it's actually over a 3 or 4 year period. And this was actually appropriated several years ago. So we kicked the can down the road on repairs to buildings, which have only been worse.
And Representative, which was your other question?
Well, so what was the actual addition part of that project at Cheney?
It wasn't an addition, it was for the replacement. It was a replacement of that for a sports complex. But okay, rather than just replacing Cope Hall, we're actually trying to get more out of the money than just replacing Cope Hall.
Okay. And then the Edinburgh project, the library addition and renovation, with so many fewer students, why is an addition needed on the library?
That is not an addition to the library. That's additional funds that are needed to complete the project. So they're actually reducing the scope of the project, but there are, let me just pull that one up.
Because on the chart here, it says BF Library addition and renovation. Then below there, it says in parentheses, additional funds.
Yeah, it's 2.6 in additional needed to fund the full scope of the renovation. The scope is limited to 3 of the 7 stories, and they're looking at keeping it as a core for the campus, which will also help them reduce their footprint in other areas. So
okay, so they're not making the building bigger. Like when I see the word addition, I think of adding a section onto an existing building.
Correct. Yeah. So we should probably clarify that on the document.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's a good point, that there are some misnomers. When you're reading this, Kutztown also has an addition. I don't know if that actually is an addition, but I think if going forward, we can use more clarified language on the project description piece, that would be helpful.
Yep, we will do
Okay,
that.
well, I appreciate the additional information. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Good points. Any other comments? Any other comments? Okay, committee members, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you very much. Madam Chair, that concludes the work of the University Committee, but before I turn the gavel back to you, I wanted to take a moment to say a few words about a very special person for whom this is their last official board meeting. After more than 25 years of service to the state system, our very own Lois Johnson will be retiring at the end of December. For those of you who have been here, you know how vitally important Lois has been not only to our committee, but to the whole board of governors. She's literally a walking encyclopedia of state system knowledge and has a unique ability to take complex issues and boil them down to something understandable. That's something she's done for me personally very, very often. More than that, she's someone who just gets things done. We will all miss her, but wish her well in whatever comes next, especially her role as new grandmother next year. With that, I now turn the gavel back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Tom. Appreciate that. And let me echo what you said about Lois. I have to say, Lois, that when I started on the board, the numbers all swam together. But you were able to make sense of them for me and for many of us. And you're such a fixture. You'll be very much missed. But I can tell you that next thing about being the grandma, that's better than anything. Terrific. So thank you again.
Thank you. It's been very much a pleasure to serve you and the board, the state system, the universities. It really has been an honor. And I'm very thankful for the years that I've had putting our best foot forward for our students. Have a lot of great colleagues, a lot of great co-workers here in the state system. It's a place full of very hardworking, devoted people that are very much interested in doing the best for our students and for the Commonwealth. So I've appreciated being part of this team for as long as I have been. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. And I appreciate those words about why we're all here. Really terrific. And I just have to add, you really don't look old enough to be a grandmother, but.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think that we can go to the next item, which is approval of committee actions. And this is a full board action item. So may I have a motion to approve the recommendations of the University Success Committee?
So moved.
And a second? I need a second.
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 Thank you. Thank you for coming off of mute and doing that for me. Okay. Is there any discussion about this motion? Okay. Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Okay. These recommendations pass. I thank you very much. And I just want to, point out, last year at this time, we had a long discussion about the appropriations request. It's interesting. I mean, everything that Sharon, you said about it when you were presenting it, I just wanted to echo from the point of view of, of lay leadership. We certainly understand what a difficult position that the state is in at this time. We're not cavalier about this request, I know we'll have further discussions about it. But we absolutely are making the request in the best interest of our students and our ability to keep costs down. We haven't raised tuition, base tuition in 2 years, and we're very thankful that we've been able to do that. So we want to thank our partners in the governor's office and in the state legislature for working with us, and we look forward to continue working with all of you. Okay, I think that we have, is this the last item, 9B?
Yes, we'll do 9C and D tomorrow.
Okay, very good. 9C and D are the audit, I think, right?
Yeah, the framework and the audit tomorrow.
The framework and the audit. Okay, fine. All right, so I'm going to call on Brian Mubu to talk about the ratification of the Memorandum of Understanding with SPIFA.
Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, Board of Governors and guests. We come to you today with the Memorandum of Understanding that is for SPIFPA, and it is a successor Memorandum of Understanding for a memorandum that expired in August 2020. And so in your packet is a summary of the main elements of the or meet and discuss sessions with SPIFPA. So it's a 2-year agreement, or 2-year memorandum, I should say, and it has increases in the spring of each of the next 2 fiscal years for the police supervisors, and certainly increases in the spring for the next 2 fiscal years as well for the security officer 2s, which is also a supervisory group. These increases are similar to increases that we provided to the other police officers within the system that you folks ratified earlier this calendar year. So I'll pause there and just see if there's any questions.
I think you're good to go, Brian.
Okay.
Randy, does that require a vote?
Yes, and I think Cindy, your audio might be muted, Cindy.
Cindy, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. I thought Brian had more to say, but I appreciate your brevity. Is there a motion that the board ratifies the Memorandum of Understanding with the International Union Security Police and Fire Professionals of America and authorizes the Chancellor and Chairwoman of the board to execute the appropriate documents? May I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Okay.
No hands.
Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Now I'm actually going to ask my board, give me your input. We had said we would stop after this, even though we had a couple more items. One of the items sort of relates more to today, and the idea of this board meeting was, thematically to present discussion and information and motions that fit together today and tomorrow, and this sort of more fits with today. So are people willing to stay a little bit longer? Andy, how long will your presentation take on 9C, University Operational Framework?
Madam Chair, it should take less time than my previous presentation on Act 50 implementation.
Okay, well, and that one you did pretty pithily, I should say. Are board members willing to stay to consider this item before we recess? I see okay. I see heads nodding. I'm going to take that as a yes. So
quick, I have a starving puppy.
Oh, okay. Well, we will be mindful of that. And Andy, do you want to please introduce this item?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So on June 10th, 2020, this board took up an affirmation of the fall framework, and this is sort of the successor action that we are bringing to you. The operational framework is how universities will continue to function during the winter session and spring semester and beyond as necessary as they travel through this pandemic. As this board did on June 10th, 2020, we're again asking you to affirm the continued use of our system standard framework in response to this pandemic, and that universities are authorized to function and operate in a manner that, number one, follows federal and state guidelines, including our own Department of Health and Pennsylvania Department of Education, related to the health and safety measures for their respective campus communities. And number two, recognizes the uniqueness of each university's geographic region, needs, and delivery of education to its students. This operational frame update to the fall framework now, but it's not tied to any one term, but meant to be a working document that will continue to be updated by the Office of the Chancellor as circumstances and conditions warrant. And you have the materials, I believe on page 30, starting on page 39 of your board.
39, right.
I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair, and the Chancellor and the presidents are available to answer any questions.
Okay. Why don't we get a motion on the table and then see if there are any questions? Is there a motion that the board hereby endorses the extension of the state system's updated university operational framework and affirms its use by all 14 institutions within the state system? The board further affirms the Chancellor's authority to modify the framework as needed to enable the state system and its constituent institutions to nimbly respond to the evolving circumstances in a timely manner. May I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second? Okay, is there any discussion or any questions about this to go forward?
Brad Roy, I have a comment.
Please.
Okay, this deals with how the universities are adjusting for COVID-19, right?
Correct.
Okay, now I really think it's important that we get the universities back to as close as normal as possible. And earlier this year, I thought that was going to be the plan. I was kind of surprised that so many of the universities went to a very remote model where almost everything was being done online. And I really think it's important that things get back to as close to normal as possible. Students that come to the PASHA universities, they want more than just the classroom experience. There's a lot of conversations with professors before and after class. There's a lot of functions on campus, guest speakers, tours being arranged, students working in groups and different, poetry readings and concerts. And, a college education is a lot more than just sitting in class for 3 or 4 hours a day. And as far as COVID-19 goes, the 2-week shutdown to flatten the curve, that was 6 months ago. And, statewide, we're up around 200,000 people have been, diagnosed with COVID-19, but the Department of Health estimates that 80% of the people are recovered. So that means, actually, here's the number right here, 176,000 about. So statewide, there's only 36,000 people that still have active cases of COVID-19. Of those, only 773 of them are in the hospital right now. So, 99% of the cases are minor, mild cases where hospitalization is not needed. Back at the peak of COVID-19, around 3,000 people were in the hospitals. We have about 35,000 hospital beds in Pennsylvania. and only 773 of them are being used for COVID-19. And then when you look at, the age group of most of our students, like something like, I don't have the number right here in front of me, but about 2/3 of all the deaths have been in nursing homes in Pennsylvania. The average age of death is 79 in Pennsylvania. So even when college students, that 18 to 24-year-old age group, it's practically zero deaths from COVID-19. Very, very low risk for the students. So I really think that we need to get back to what I call real college. It's more than just getting your classes through a computer screen. It's so much more than that. And I really hope that the university presidents and the local council of trustees get us back to that as soon as possible. And there's just, this is a very discouraging time for so many people, in college and people that aren't in college. It's so isolating, and it's so, it's almost like we're all living on, remote islands and only communicating by computers or something. And we really need to get back to, living our lives normally, keeping things as safe as we can, just balancing, normal life with safety. So I really hope that we can do that.
Representative Roy, thank you very much. I really appreciate your comments. I understand your perspective. I think all of us, believe me, want the same thing. I haven't seen members of my immediate family in I don't know, 5 or 6 months. We get it. We're all there with you. And I know the president's, more importantly and more relevant to your remarks, I know and I am confident that the presidents are doing everything that they can to get to as much normalcy as possible under the circumstances, and have taken your message to heart, as we all have. And they're doing a great job under the circumstances. This particular item just sets up the framework. It basically says we're going to follow the guidelines that are set by the state and et cetera, and work within those guidelines and what's required for each step of the way. And it simply extends it. And I personally look forward to the day that we won't have to have such a framework in place. Unfortunately, it's not here right now. So it's our responsibility, to continue our greatest task, which is to ensure safety. And that's what we're doing with extending this framework. But we all very much appreciate, I know people really appreciate what you're saying. So thank you.
I'd like to just comment real quickly too.
Sure.
Not on the policy specifically, but just for us to recognize that there is a loss of connection for students on our campuses in the current setup, and that we need to remain committed to balancing safety as well as their success. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely. And, we heard that from all of the presidents and from you and our other students when we talked about this earlier. So we absolutely are keeping that foremost in mind. And it's a shame we have to do this. Nobody likes doing this. Any other comments or questions? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Okay, the motion.
I'm
Yes?
sorry,
Go.
Brad Roy. I need to oppose just to be on record how strongly I feel about needing to, get things back to normal. Thank you.
I understand. That's perfectly within your rights. Sharissa, I would ask then for a roll call vote.
So noted. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, great. Representative Tim Briggs. Governor Audrey Bronson. Governor Nicole Dunlop.
Yeah.
Governor Alexander Feefalt.
Aye.
Governor Donald Hauser.
Yes.
Senator Scott Martin. Vice Chair David Mazer, Governor Marion Moskowitz, Governor Thomas Mueller,
Aye.
Secretary Noe Ortega,
Yes.
Representative Brad Roy,
No.
Senator Judith Swank, Chair Shapira,
Yes.
Vice Chair Sam Smith,
Yes.
Secretary Meg Snead, Governor Stephen Washington, Governor Neil Weaver, Governor Janet Yeomans.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Okay, in a moment, we'll stand in recess until tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Any other comments before I declare recess?